Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our special council meeting on January 29th, 2026, to be called to order at 5:30 p.m. May I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favour, and that carries unanimously. I will turn it over to Councillor Cressman for the territorial land acknowledgement.
We have gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should take only what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and the First Nation, Métis, and Inuit peoples, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community.
Thank you, Councillor. I'd be looking for a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda as amended. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Sadhu. All those in favour, and that carries. And are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? Seeing none. We do have 4 members registered for delegations this evening. When we get to that point, we will call you up to the podium. I believe everybody is registered in person. We do also have an item of correspondence. Did any member want to speak to the correspondence? Seeing none. So right into our reports. So we are starting, of course, with the presentation of the budget. Just logistically, for how the evening's going to go, we'll have the budget presentation, have an opportunity for council to ask any clarifying questions, and then we'll invite up our delegates, and then council can debate and propose any amendments that they would like. And we will carry on from there. But that is generally the structure, and then going into our other report on the fees and charges. So, everybody, I believe, does have a copy printed in terms of councillors have a copy of the budget presentation in front of them. It's also up on the slide decks here. And I'm the first one on the hop. So, Budget 2026, I'm assuming that you've all read through the public-facing documents. I did just want to provide some clarity, as I know I've gotten a few questions in the last day or two that I wanted to acknowledge in terms of council's engagement with the budget and the process. So in late June and early July, council was invited to have meetings with myself and finance staff to provide their priorities for their residents and hopes and outcomes for this budget. That information was then compiled into a memo that was circulated to all of our corporate leadership team as well as to council, and that's what informed how directors then went about developing their budgets for this year. We did, as the public knows, hired KPMG in the fall to help support our staff as we were lacking the financial expertise of certified accountants. So we did bring in KPMG's team, who is also here tonight, to help provide support, and they wound up going through with our directors line by line doing zero-based budgeting. This really came out from the fact that a lot of assumptions were not able to be explained, or there were irregularities in accounting practices, and so it was really to align this budget with best budget principles and practices and ensuring that it's also accurate as to what it costs to run the services in the municipality. Council on December 19th did receive a draft form of a budget, and we're given the opportunity to also have meetings with our CAO, Deputy CAO, and myself to go through questions of any nature, including to see line-by-line items should they want, and all of the line-by-line documents remain available to them. They simply need to go through the CAO or Deputy CAO, which is made very clearly articulated in emails. Council then on January the 8th received the final budget the evening before it was made public on January the 9th. And accommodations were made on January 8th for those who had travel plans to ensure that they got a paper copy as well. On January the 9th, it was released on the public, and that kind of gets into part of the process we're at today. So the 30-day clock started on January 9th. This is a legislative clock that outlines council and the public have 30 days to council has 30 days to make amendments. This is very standard to how our budget processes have happened, where council can, through a motion, propose to change the budget in any way they see fit. And then that brings us to this evening, and the 30th day brings us to February the 9th, which we do tentatively have a meeting, which council would just need to initiate with clerks on the 5th of February if they plan to bring forward an amendment for that meeting. So I hope that clarifies council involvement and what council has access to in terms of the budget. Now, next slide, please. I think it's just coming up here. Maybe. Perfect. Oh, there we go. So looking at the budget at a glance, again, this was in the start of the budget booklet. I do want to make note of two items that came to our attention and have been since rectified both on this presentation as well as in the budget booklet. The initial print was missing the additional capital funding sources, which is the Ontario Infrastructure Funding and the Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund of approximately $5.5 million. So for those who were trying to reconcile the budget numbers, that was the number that was initially missing. As I said, that has been updated on the budget booklet on the website. And also wanted to draw to everybody's attention the water and wastewater rates were misstated in the original print, and it's actually 5% and 6%. It does not actually change the numbers that were used in the actual budget. It was simply a misprint on the public-facing document. So with that, the proposed tax levy is 9.7%, and that's an estimated annual household impact of $231. And just to keep in mind that there are multiple different methodologies that can be used for annual household impact, so this number won't necessarily reflect your exact tax bill. It's more so used as an average number, breaking down the tax assessment. The other note is water and wastewater, of course, only impact you if you are connected to municipal water and wastewater services. Another thing about the budget in general is that the 9.7% really reflects the exercise that I spoke about, and KPMG will speak about a bit further, but of the zero-based budgeting and justifying every single number. That was done through looking at multiple years of actuals and seeing what we actually spend versus what we have been budgeting for and reporting that we spend. So this is really a budget of realignment to ensure that we're paying for the current services. The only other really additional adds, which again staff will speak to in their departments, but council was aware of the separation of our corporate services and our financial services and the addition of a deputy CAO position. Council was informed about this, and this happened after Strategy Corps, who council hired and retained to provide an organizational review for us, presented to council, and then proceeded forward with, making those changes that were recommended, and the financial impacts were made aware to council, and council unanimously supported that direction. So that is the biggest ticket item change that we actually see versus the correctional errors. Moving on to the next slide, please. So the budget process, I did go through council's engagement part, but wanted to speak to, it does adhere to the new strong mayor legislation. I know some people are questioning why that legislation was used. In the actual wording of the legislation, it says that a mayor shall present a budget before February the 1st, so I personally interpret that as it is my responsibility under legislation to bring forward a budget for council's consideration. The opportunity it did provide in this case was much in contrast to last year when council was unaware until it was dropped of the 50% proposed budget. Council's been involved and actually had the largest opportunity to influence the actual development and priorities and goals of this budget, at least in this term of council. I can't speak to when I was not here. In addition, I think the majority of the other budget processes are outlined. There is going to be more detail later in the presentation, but really want to emphasize tonight what our opportunity is again for council as normal to be able to propose amendments, ask questions of the budget, and be able to really continue to serve our public on how we bring forward the best budget for them. And next slide, please. And in addition to some of the other items that I've in the costs of items that we rely on to be able to deliver our services. And of course, it has been considered throughout this whole budget, the affordability of our residents, and that's one of the key reasons, both why we brought in KPMG to support, but also have KPMG's team working on a long-term financial strategy. And that's really with the aim to be able to give more stability to residents to know what to expect for our future financial planning, and that is going to be undertaken during Q1 of this year and brought forward for council's input and then finally adoption. I did note that this budget is zero-based budgeting, and I'll let KPMG speak more to that. And on a whole, like I said, council has had ample opportunity for input on this budget process, and I look forward to the conversations tonight where people see fit to propose amendments. With that, I will turn it over to the team from KPMG.
Thank you, Mayor Solomon. Members of the council, good evening. I do have a slight nuance from our national risk management team, given a heavily regulated firm. So as I catch my breath from driving fast and do this boilerplate discussion, please bear with me. Mayor Solomon and the department heads are aware of the scope of our engagement. And like I mentioned, our risk team requires me to state the following. We're engaged in purely an advisory capacity and do not directly report to the mayor or mayor's office. We are an independent third-party global accounting firm, heavily regulated, with risk management calling me every week if I do something which is not in accordance with them. Our scope was to assist the mayor and township staff with development of a detailed and supported 2026 budget line by line, as Mayor Solomon mentioned, with throwing out the assumptions in from past year which we couldn't substantiate. So every line item for this year has been substantiated to the extent assumptions can be substantiated to support the numbers and estimates. I must remind everyone, detailed questions must be addressed to the township staff. So KPMG is not perceived as employee of the township. We will fully assist the township staff and the mayor in providing responses to those questions as they come along. We're not the auditors of the township and not engaged in any assurance capacity. Having said that, no assurance can be provided on a budget because it's forward-looking, not that we're engaged in that capacity. However, confident in our approach, calculations, and the underlying numbers. The detailed budget documents did not change as a result of any questions, as the mayor noted, and we're very confident in the support and the backup and the documentation we have. I'll jump into our methodology, zero-based budgeting, which essentially broken down in simple words means questioning every single line item, using historical data to the extent it is relevant, understanding estimates and assumptions in discussions with those who are knowledgeable, the department heads, and then just projecting forward any expected items for 2026. So the first step for that was we reviewed the past 3 years' budgets, the underlying information were available, including any relevant assumptions. We did not note a lot of documentation to support those assumptions for the budgets in the prior year, so that's one of the major things we work collectively with the township staff to document so that anyone in the future years can pick it up and roll it forward and understand what was done in the prior year. Secondly, we reviewed variances for the past 3 years to understand how the actual results lined up with the budgets. It provided us with the historical data, which is the basis of zero-based budgeting for an existing organization, a mature organization like the township, and we use that as a basis to start building the 2026 budget. Thirdly and finally, we set up several meetings with each department head and other township team members to develop the budget for each line with supporting documentation. Detailed examples of this approach were provided by the mayor in the booklet. For a couple of examples, how that methodology was applied. Examples include utilities, telephone, etc. Forward-looking information such as oil prices, inflation expectations were used to support the estimated amounts using third-party data. For example, price of oil, projected price of oil is available through public information, and we have that supported and documented in the budget. Finally, I would like to thank Mayor Sullivan and the township staff, the department heads, for their integrity, professionalism, competence, attention to detail, and hard work throughout the process of our engagement. This would not have been possible if there was a resistance. We faced zero resistance in our engagement. It was quite the opposite. Everybody stepped up. We're especially grateful to the department heads for always prioritizing the budget process among their busy schedules. And finally, I'd like to thank my team, without whose hard work it wouldn't have been possible. I'm accompanied here by my right-hand manager, Himalay, who was instrumental in working hard with the department heads to put this together. So having said this, we're confident about the budget. We worked hard. And I just also want to add, KPMG would not have allowed me to sit here today and speak to the council. We typically do not do that. The treasurer does it if we had any integrity concerns or competence concerns. So I would close off with that. Pass it back to you, Mayor Sullivan.
Thank you very much, Ash. We will now jump into the departmental budget overviews. So the first one is the Office of Mayor and Council. As everybody knows, the Office of Mayor and Council consists of the electeds as well as the support individual for council. And if you want to go to the next slide, to the numbers there. Thank you. So on the numbers, and I know that council already received this information, but looking at the compensation line, this includes cost of living increase for council. So that is one opportunity. I know council historically has foregone COLA. We do have the opportunity, should somebody want to bring that forward again, to do that. But right now it is currently in the compensation line. We also have a compensation for the COLA application that's currently existing for all staff, for the staff member in this department. There was actually a over budgeting in this line item, which I know council did receive the email. I believe it was Councillor Martin who was asking about it. That was due to, we actually overcompensated for the current backfilling of that maternity leave. It got counted twice. So there is opportunity in there for about $65,000 to be removed and actually should be corrected. Operating expenses, we do see an increase. The largest reason for this is actually budgeting for what we currently pay. So based off of the actuals going back multiple years, for going to conferences as well as doing town halls, among other events out of council's budget, we were not properly budgeting what was being spent. So this has been based off of right now, it's allotted for each councillor to be able to attend up to 2 conferences based off of the averages of the price of those conferences. That would be AMO and Romer, the ones historically that we go to. However, our policy does not discern that it has to be those 2 conferences. It is really a professional development amount, but that is where that number is based off of, and really correcting the fact that we were not properly budgeting for what was being spent. And then in terms of the contingency, that also is part of the operating expense increase, but we see the 100% decrease. So that was, council will remember 2 years ago, we added a contingency line. KPMG has informed us that that is not best budgeting practices to have unitemed lines. So instead they've added that into the things such as being able to run town halls, and worked that right into the operating expenses. That also includes when we have council ads in the newspaper, which we've done before for Christmas and for things like Canada Day as well. So that is really the changes to council and mayor's budget. Like I said, there are already identified 2 particular areas where certainly the one I would encourage change, but the other area is in council's hands. I will now turn it over to our CAO.
Thank you very much, Mayor Salonen. So we're going to sort of go through the departments one at a time. Now, starting off with the Office of the CAO. The left-hand side of the screen gives you a department overview, so I won't go into details on that. Going over to the right-hand side of the screen, the budget highlights. There are a number of strategic initiatives that are on our agenda, and so in order to help build capacity for that, we did create an additional role. It's not an additional position, but it's additional duties for one of the directors. In this case, Mr. Okrafka has been appointed Deputy CAO, and there is a budget impact of that, which is $25,000. The next item on this page is talking about the culture of cooperation and collaboration. And rebuilding that culture is well underway, not only across departments and throughout the staff team, but between staff and council and between the organization and the community as well. That we want to show that we're here to be collaborative, cooperative, and that's the way we can best serve the community. In terms of partnerships, there are a number of key partnerships and we're trying to strengthen those. Certainly high among that list is Waterloo Region and the 6 other area municipalities, and particularly the 3 other townships in Waterloo Region, and building cooperative relationships with them and potential partnerships with them. Line compensation, the budget change is $170,000, and almost all of that is a salary continuance for a former staff member who is no longer here. This budget is now, this department is now fully staffed for the first time in a long time, so that certainly shows up as a significant change, but it's one that will end partway through 2026. In terms of operating expenses, there is an increase there of $103,000, and I want to draw attention to an issue that explains this, but it also applies, I think, across every department, and the mayor had touched on it as well. And I'm quoting from page 22 of the actual budget document. There's a paragraph there that talks about zero-based budgeting and cost realignment. Mr. Garg has explained zero-based budgeting, so I won't elaborate on that. But I read from the budget document. This review, which was the line-by-line review that KPMG did with the organization, identified several costs that had not been consistently or fully reflected in prior budgets, despite being incurred. As a result, some line items may appear higher in 26, not due to service increases, but because costs are now being more accurately accounted for. So this is what is being referred to as right-sizing of the budget or one-time corrections, because these are costs that had been consistently incurred over the last 3 years. Looking at the last 3 years' actuals, KPMG was able to hold our feet to the fire to explain why these actuals were happening, and then that enabled us all to establish this right sizing of the proposed operating budget for 2026. So in that regard, operating expenses, there are a couple of things here that look like big increases, but in fact, they're not when you compare them to the actuals. So the biggest one along those is outside legal counsel. As people likely know, the township does not have any legal expertise on staff. We reach out to outside counsel when we need to, and these were not appropriately budgeted for in the past. Our budget was around $125,000 a year. Our 3-year average was close to $180,000. So our budget this year is $180,000. So it's right-sized in comparison to the actuals over the last 3 years, but it looks like a big jump when you put that into something that that was a small number that never should have been. So long-winded explanation. Hopefully you only hear that from me once, but I think as we go down the line here, just about every department has these one-time corrections that are right-sizing because the budget was never appropriately accounted for in the past. I think that's pretty much it for my departmental overview. I think the only other thing I wanted to say is that in terms of legal counsel and the cost of bringing in legal expertise from consultants is that we do that only when necessary, and I have 100% confidence that the actuals over the past while, certainly since I've been here, do reflect when we really did need that legal expertise. So with that as overview, I will now pass it to Director Catania.
Thank you, CEO Wilmer, and through you, Mayor Salin. For community services, our department ensures that residents have a variety of high-quality parks, recreation, and cultural experiences, creating constructive, healthy, and active lifestyle for residents. The core business functions consist of recreation, culture, parks, trails, and facilities. From an administration perspective, key initiatives include strategic master planning and service delivery, development of policy and administrative processes, asset management and capital project management. Highlighted in 2025 was the provincial grant funded towards the WRC ice refrigeration plant and also the approval of the updated Arts and Culture Master Plan. In recreation and culture, participant numbers and revenue targets were exceeded with summer camp programming, learn to swim programs, and ice rentals. Partnerships with the Family Resource Center and Community Care Concepts has enabled further programming for older adults at the Wilmot Recreation Complex. Castle Kilbride continues to increase year-over-year admissions, highlighted by various Castle events, programs, and workshops that are offered. And further events and initiatives that tie into the Arts and Culture Master Plan will be explored in 2026. The Parks and Facilities branch is responsible for all municipal facilities, park, trail, and public open spaces. This includes inspecting and maintaining 280 acres of park space with 100 various outdoor amenities that include playgrounds, sports fields, sports courts, and site furniture. This team helps contribute to the successes for various community special events with setup, logistics, as well as community partnership with groups such as Let's Tree Wilmot for township reforestation projects. In 2026, the department has highlighted critical asset replacements. This includes the WRC aquatic HVAC system. The advancement of this system is vital for ensuring proper humidity control within the aquatic center. The other key initiative is the flooring replacement at the St. Agatha Community Center, and by advancing this project, a more resilient flooring can be established that provides more flexible space for multi-use programmable recreation programs that we would have. That's been adopted in the Community Services Master Plan. And to highlight on the next page here regarding some of the variances and the changes here, from a compensation perspective in community services, there are step increases as well and progressions through that. But from a staffing level perspective, we're looking at a part-time seasonal position in forestry, so a senior arborist, part-time through the summertime, as well as a couple of other horticultural students. From an operating expense perspective, we have seen some increases to right-size our budget when it comes to our utilities, as well as from a building maintenance perspective. We do have aging assets and infrastructure where there's a lot more repairs that are actually taking place, specifically with our kind of flagship facility with the WRC. A lot of that is actually offset by the increased programming from our ICE revenue when we look at 12 months a year for ICE time and permitting there, as well as the increased volume of programming through our aquatics program. We generate more revenue through Learn to Swim programs, and as well we're looking at expanding our summer camp programs. And at this time, I will turn it over to Deputy CAO Okrafka.
Thank you. Corporate Services, as Council is aware, is a new department, combined the non-financial part of the old Corporate Services Department combined with several aspects that previously reported directly to the CAO. The department overview, we include communications, who deliver critical messaging through various channels to the public. Our HR group, who recruit top talent and retain them for the community. Our legislative services group, who supports council and ensures that all the statutory requirements are met both in these chambers but also with the upcoming election. Our bylaw enforcement group, who obviously enforce bylaws but also spend a lot of time doing education as well as the enforcement. And then our IT group as well, who maintain our technology to try to keep the township running smoothly. And the highlights for the year, obviously the first and foremost probably on council's mind is the delivery of an effective and accessible municipal election. That work has already begun and will continue throughout the year. We are refreshing the communication strategy to improve two-way engagement with residents, and that will be coming forward in the next, probably in Q1, possibly Q2, but probably Q1 of 2026. We're looking at Wi-Fi enhancements at the Wilmot Recreation Complex and also at the Administration Complex, which I think many of us will appreciate. And also continuing to proceed with the records management program that was initiated last year. It's been talked about for a long time. We're making headway, making some good advances in digitizing and creating a streamlined and yet efficient way of maintaining our records. And so that process is underway as well. In terms of the budget highlights, I mentioned a few of the bigger projects, the election obviously, and some of the IT efforts. Compensation-wise, the biggest change ultimately is the creation of the new Director of Corporate Services position. Again, a splitting of corporate services from financial services. The expenses, as CAO Wilmer indicated, a lot of this is right-sizing the budget, looking at lines over the last number of years, what had been budgeted versus what had actually been spent, and then budgeting appropriately to recognize actuals versus, we can put zero for every budget line and make the budget look really great, but at the end of the year, it doesn't look so great. And so that's really what this exercise for corporate services has been, and trying to address those issues and provide you with a budget that reflects actually what we will spend in 2026 to deliver the services that you already expect. And with that, I will turn it over to Director Martin relative to development services.
So thank you. Development Services, quick overview. Our department is responsible for planning division, building division, heritage, and economic development. So we deal with a lot of legislative requirements, both from a building and planning standpoint. The largest part of our operational budget is really having adequate staff and resources to enforce legislative requirements from both a building and planning standpoint. We ensure we have a staff complement to continue to meet or exceed the timeframes required by the province for building permit issuance. Given significant changes in provincial legislation, to remain on top of that is a job in and of itself most days. But certainly we're working to ensure our documents, our processes, and our updated official plan align with continuing changes to provincial legislation and planning in the province of Ontario. So that's probably the most significant piece of our department this year, is finalizing that document, which will help guide growth and development and investment for our community for the next 25 years. So that's a significant piece of that, the work in our department. We engaged from a heritage perspective in our Castle Kilbride and Heritage Advisory Committee, involved in facilitating review of development and proposals in our Heritage Conservation District in New Hamburg, and also working with residents and property owners to see if there's any opportunity to preserve and protect heritage resources throughout the township. And from an economic development standpoint, we're certainly there to work with the business community. We work closely with the Waterloo Economic Development Corporation. There's been changes recently in that in terms of investment to work with rural initiatives, including a dedicated resource that's specifically working on rural-related matters. So we're engaging with that and seeing that there's components of that will lead to opportunities and investment realization in our rural townships. As far as a quick overview, the most significant piece of our budget, again, is to ensure that we have the staff resources and complement to meet the requirements provincially. The numbers there potentially don't reflect, the actualities of our department. There's a significant, was spoken to earlier, about some matters in previous.
To be replaced on Monday with the new treasurer, Harjot Gurul, is financial services. As council is aware, financial services has some split from corporate services and will function moving forward as a separate department focused only on the financial aspects of the municipality. That includes responsibility for financial planning and reporting, budgeting, accounting, treasury functions, and regulatory compliance, and providing accurate financial information with strong financial controls to support long-term financial planning and to help council and senior staff make informed decisions. The highlights of the budget, some of these you're already aware of. As council is aware, they approved the hiring in 2025 of ERP project manager and the implementation of an enterprise resource planning system for the financial group, basically new financial software to replace the end-of-life Keystone system that we currently use. And the cost of that software was also approved in June of 2025 through a report and approval. That RFP has now been issued. It should close, I believe, mid-February, and we're hoping that the new treasurer and our ERP project manager will be able to move forward with that system, and that will hopefully come on stream sometime in 2027 and be a great benefit in a number of ways, not the least of which is financial reporting. Working with KPMG, the new treasurer will also deliver a long-term financial plan to council, and that, again, is beginning in Q1 and will be coming forward to you. And similarly, our asset management plan needs to be updated, and working with PSD, our asset management coordinator, will be working with the new treasurer to bring a more detailed, costed-out asset management plan in 2026. PSD was contracted last summer, and that contract has been paused until such time as our asset management coordinator is back from maternity leave, which he is, and our new treasurer is on board, which he will be as of Monday. So there will be lots of work to get our financial services group moving forward, and that will be a benefit to council and the community. Also, as council is aware, last budget season you approved the hiring of a grants coordinator, grant specialist, who began this fall. And we have had some success early on in terms of ensuring that we're maximizing our grant applications and ensuring that even within those grant applications that we're seeking the maximum dollars to ensure that wherever possible we're getting full money. So a number of grant applications have been submitted, including one that closes, I believe, February. We'll hear a report back on the emergency preparedness grant, which affects infrastructure services and our fire departments. So some good work is there, hoping to see positive results. Again, council is aware that position was created as they created that in 2025. Budgetary-wise, the bulk of the changes on financial services budget, certainly the number of FTEs does not change in 2026. It's the same as 2025. In 2025, though, you did add 2 FTEs to the department, being the grant specialist, but also the supervisor of taxation and revenue. And I think, obviously, we've seen a lot of good results from creating that position in terms of reporting and processes. Budgetary-wise, the significant costs ultimately will be the contracted services costs to get the financial services group back up and running and to get our programs and processes in place. Restoring our financial reporting to the province has been an important one. Certainly council is aware of the challenges we've overcome over the last 3 months, and we're looking forward to that continuing moving forward. I will now turn it over to Fire Chief Leeson.
Thank you. Through the chair, excuse me, sorry. Wilmot Fire Department is committed to protecting the life, property, and environment across our township. Our firefighters respond to fires, medical emergencies, vehicle collisions, hazardous material incidents, and severe weather events 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Beyond emergency response, we deliver fire prevention inspections, safety education, training programs, and community support activities that help reduce the risk and strengthen local resilience. A key strength of Wilmot Fire Services is our volunteer department model. Volunteer firefighters bring professional-level training, a strong sense of duty, and a deep personal connection to the community. They live here, work here, and understand the people they serve. This model allows the township to provide a high standard of fire protection while managing costs in a responsible and sustainable way. This is not a comparison for better or worse. Career fire departments perform exceptional work and are the right fit for communities with higher call volumes, urban density, or staffing requirements. Rather, Wilmot's volunteer system is the model that best matches our geography, our call demand, and fiscal priorities. It delivers excellent emergency response while maintaining the financial balance that residents value. For the community, the benefit of volunteer models are significant. Cost-effective service delivery, reducing tax pressure while maintaining strong protection. Highly trained professionals who meet provincial standards and respond with confidence and professionalism. Community connectedness, resulting in compassionate, neighbor-focused approaches to our emergencies. Strong prevention and education presence, helping residents stay safe long and before any emergency occurs. Behind the scenes, Wilmot's fire administration team ensures the department operates safely, efficiently, and in full compliance with provincial regulations, which are extensive. Each role contributes unique value. The fire chief provides overall leadership and strategic direction. The chief manages budgets, long-term planning, emergency management coordination, policy development, and council reporting. They ensure the department meets legislative requirements and that our firefighters have the resources, the training, and the support needed to serve the community effectively. Fire Prevention Division is a team that conducts inspections, investigates fire causes, enforces Ontario Fire Code, and delivers public education programs. Their work reduces hazards, improves building safety, helps prevent emergencies from occurring in the first place, one of the most effective ways to protect the community and manage long-term risk. Administrative support staff maintain the essential day-to-day operations that keep the department running. They handle records management, data and incident reporting, scheduling, financial processing, communications and coordination between divisions. They ensure smooth operations and allow frontline and prevention staff to focus on service delivery. The training division develops and delivers the training program that keeps our firefighters skilled, certified, and safe. They organize drills, coordinate with provincial training standards, maintain training records, and ensure that both new and veteran firefighters are ready for the wide range of emergencies they may face. Together, the volunteer firefighters and the dedicated administration team form a complete integrated fire service, one that provides excellent protection, cost-effective operations, and a strong community value for everyone who calls home. In 2026, a few key initiatives will be undertaken. Most important will be the Fire Master Plan and Community Risk Assessment that will be coordinated with the new official plan, which will be presented to Council and the public later this year. The Fire Master Plan and Community Risk Assessment, however, should be completed sometime in Q4 this year or at latest Q1 of 2027. Enhancements to public education initiatives for fire prevention and emergency management will include increased public education with local schools to replace the missing safety messaging since the region's safety village closed, along with fire extinguisher training system due to the year-over-year demand and necessary training for many local businesses and industries, including the township, to meet legislative requirements. Thank you.
Director Vanderwall.
Thank you. Infrastructure Services Department includes Public Works and Engineering Services. These divisions primarily focus on the activities and infrastructure in the municipal right-of-way. They also oversee some pumping stations and infrastructure and easements on private properties. Public Works focuses on operational activities, while engineering has a more functional and capital replacement or permitting focus. Our Public Works can be further divided into roads and water wastewater. Our roads team have several key operational expenditures throughout the year, including the hardtop and loose top maintenance with a combined budget of just over $360,000 to address gravel roads and complete pothole patching. The township maintains approximately 275 kilometers of roads that range from gravel to fully urbanized paved streets. Our roads crew is responsible for snow removal, which requires a significant budget for staffing, sand, salt, and fuel. The snow removal budget, excluding labor, is approximately $675,000, and this budget has been underfunded by approximately $32,000 annually for the last 3 years. A significant portion of this department's operating increase relates to a one-time correction or right-sizing of our snow removal budget. Our roads team is also responsible for year-round patrols to verify safety features like signage, potholes, debris, tree hazards, and more. Road patrols also address ditches and stormwater management, maintenance hole cleanout. Our Water and Wastewater Division is responsible for Wilmot's water distribution system, which currently has approximately 84 kilometers of water mains. They also oversee compliance requirements with the Ministry of Environment, Climate, and Parks. Additionally, they are responsible for our sanitary sewer network, including our 5 township-owned lift stations. And our water and wastewater staff and operations are fully funded from user rates. And these user rates also create a reserve to pay for related capital infrastructure upgrades for water and wastewater. Our engineering division has undertaken several initiatives related to maintaining, upgrading, and better understanding the general condition of our assets. Engineering focuses on capital delivery of projects such as the Petersburg System upgrade and annual pavement restoration, which is split between urban and rural. Also includes sidewalk repairs and sewer relining. Engineering is also collecting data on the condition of our assets through our Ontario Structures Inspection reporting on bridges and culverts, our closed circuit video program for our sanitary and storm mains, and our sanitary flow monitoring. The engineering division also conducts corridor management, which includes permitting for third-party utilities and for development connections to the municipal system. Corridor management addresses traffic review and data collection for implementing our traffic calming policy and working with the Region of Waterloo on traffic-related concerns. Closely related to the corridor management is development review for new developments or site plans, and we work with the development services to ensure appropriate integration into the municipal network for storm, sanitary, water, and traffic connections on subdivisions, site plans, and similar applications. This year's budget request includes funding to start a water master plan for the township, and in future years we plan to continue our efforts to enhance our understanding of our infrastructure from an asset management and replacement perspective, as well as a capacity and risk perspective. Thank you.
I want to touch on a few capital budget projects, and the next slide shows these at the bottom of the screen. So the first one that I want to touch on is the Baden Trunk Sanitary Sewer. This is a very large project. It's a two-phase project, and the second phase of it is just over $5 million. It's a new sanitary trunk that is necessary to accommodate short-term and long-term growth in the Baden area, and it will be using micro-tunneling technology, which minimizes the disruption to the road surface. The thing that I wanted to highlight here is the funding sources. There's $2.7 million of funding that is already set aside. $800,000 is in the proposed budget, which is coming from development charges, and $1.5 million, again included in this budget, is from a grant. It is the Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund grant. So that, together with the $2.7 million of funding that's set aside, brings us to the $5.05 million that is the total budget for this program, for this very large project. The next one I want to highlight is the Petersburg water system replacement. It is a replacement of the existing water system and a rehabilitation of the road. The key thing to notice here is that it's a project that's, for budget purposes, spread over 2 years. It's a roughly $4 million project. In 26, the roads component is taxpayer funded, and that's $371,000. The local improvement system is being, or the local improvement method is what's being used to fund the replacement of the water system. And that's $1.6 million per year over each of the next 2 years. The township will upfront that cost, and then the benefiting property owners will pay that back over a number of years. So the key thing to notice there is that it's only the roads portion, the $371,000, that is taxpayer funded. Next project to highlight is the sanitary relining on Huron Street as well as Centennial and Hillview, and on an easement behind Greenwood. The reason that this is important to highlight is because the inflow and infiltration is, as our engineering staff have pointed out to council and the community, one of the biggest challenges we have, but one of the ones that is that's something we can address fairly reasonably, and this is an example of that. It's a $1.2 million project, and it is not taxpayer funded. $800,000 comes from the sanitary utility, and $350,000 comes from development charges. The idea here is to reline the sewer and reline the laterals on private property, as well as the sewer. 62 properties are there, and this is an area that's already been identified as a high rates or high volumes of infiltration into the system. So we can make our system more efficient with this investment. The projects that I've talked about so far are all underground infrastructure, critical infrastructure, but out of sight, out of mind. When they're working well, you don't really think too much about the sanitary sewers and the water mains. On the opposite side of that is the sort of, as I think was described earlier tonight, as the crown jewel of the township's infrastructure, which is the Wilmot Recreation Centre. And this project is a $1.1 million project to replace the HVAC system, so heating, ventilation, air conditioning. It's really to do with humidity, because when you've got a building that's got a pool in it and it's got a number of shower rooms in it, humidity is not your friend when you're running mechanics and equipment and a building. If it's not running well, there will be a significant cost. So this is at the end of its life. It's about 15 years old now, and this is an investment not only in the HVAC system, but in the building itself, so that we can avoid damage to the mechanical systems in the building itself, and the mold and rust and all the other things that happen if you're not dealing with humidity appropriately. Next project has to do with another underground infrastructure, but the reason we wanted to highlight this one is because it's a design project. The project, the design component of it is roughly $280,000 split over 2 years. So in this year's budget, it's $140,000, and it's to design a sewer extension and a water main for Stone Street and Huron Road. The purpose of this is that there's a number of properties that are now on septic systems, and this would enable them to get on the sanitary sewer system. And by doing the design, we will have a shovel-ready project that enables us to apply for grant funding. So the project is intended to be constructed in 2029, and if the design is done over the next year and a bit, that enables us to apply for grant funding. And so I think that's why it's important to highlight that we're getting ahead of things, and we want to be able to benefit from grant funding where it's available. We need to have those detailed designs done and to have shovel-ready projects. So the last project I want to highlight comes back to the idea of inflow and infiltration, probably because my bias here is you can never understand this well enough, and it's important for council and the community to understand the importance of this. So this is not a one-time project, as I think everything else I've highlighted here is a one-time project. This is an annual project, $75,000 a year. Again, it's not taxpayer funded. The sanitary sewer rates pay for 85% of it, and the development charges pay for 15%. But the idea here is that where there are properties that are in areas where there's high rates of water getting into the sanitary sewer systems, either through sump pumps or through leakage and laterals. This is a system or a grant program that allows private property owners to correct the problem, and then the public system benefits from that. So I wanted to highlight it partly because it's about I&I, but also because it's an annual program rather than a one-time program, and that it's a good example of those annual capital programs. So with that, I turn it back to the Mayor.
Thank you very much. So that comes to the main steps of the actual budget itself. Again, we will have questions for council in a moment. I did want to speak to the long-term financial plan. Next slide, please. So in terms of the long-term financial plan, as noted in all of the budget documentation, there's not a 10-year capital plan, and this is because we currently have KPMG's team working alongside our staff, as noted before, on developing a long-term financial plan. What council did receive last year as the 10-year capital plan, and what was also brought forward, it was the same document brought forward at the November public input meeting, was really all that we had to work off of for a most recent capital plan, and frankly, in my opinion, did not warrant being published with this document, and instead having KPMG work alongside our staff and support them in a real long-term financial plan that's grounded in fiscal responsibility and sustainability. So that is going to be coming forward to council throughout the first quarter of this year. And my understanding is that there are going to be points of input for council as to what direction council wants to take for our long-term financial planning. And in terms of what was just presented in the capital plan, as well as all of the capital justification sheets that were also provided in the budget booklet, that is quite confidently grounded in what is required for this year in terms of asset management, and being able to protect our assets that we already own and ensure that we're able to deliver on our legislated requirements for certain services. So in that respect, for the capital budget, again, council has all of those documents, as do the public, but instead of going through each one individually, I would leave it up to the councillor to bring forward any that they have questions. That can be all of them, but any of them that they have questions on, and any items that council may look to amending or removing from the budget. Or of course, there's also the addition, as there were many items that did not make it from the draft budget into the final budget, and if council sees fit, of course, you are have the opportunity to request those being reintroduced. Now, in terms of next steps, I'm actually going to turn it over to our clerk in regards to the legislative process.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Council. Council is currently within the 30-day period to propose amendments to the Mayor's budget. That period does end on February 9th. If no amendments were made, the budget will be deemed adopted the following day. A special council meeting is scheduled for February 9th to deal with any proposed amendments. To allow for transparency and publication of a council agenda, members of council are asked to submit any proposed amendments to the clerk by February 5th. If no amendments are received, the February 9th meeting can be cancelled. Council does have the option this evening to pass amendments to the budget, and if council wishes, shorten the amendment period to expedite the adoption of the budget. If council passes a resolution to shorten the period where no amendments are passed, the budget is deemed adopted by the municipality at the expiry of that shortened period, and where amendments are passed, the mayor's veto period would begin at the expiry of that shortened period. So those are the procedural next steps available to council this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And clerk, can you just clarify the overturning veto amount, what that vote number actually is in council? So it is 2/3 to override a veto of mayor, but I know Wilmot Council, there's some details on that.
Yes, so to overturn the veto does require a 2/3 vote with a 6-member council. That is, the number is 4, so your majority vote.
Yes, thank you. So before we jump into council questions, I do just want to take an opportunity to thank all of our staff, our entire corporate leadership team. Thank you for all of the time and effort and work that has gone into this, and rolling with the continual changes in who was in what roles, and in particular to Director Okrafka for stepping in to fill a role and to be able to be kind of the staff point person to run the budget. And of course to CAO Wilmer, your expertise and also really great proofreading skills were excellent. But thank you very much for steering your whole staff team to bring forward the budget. And KPMG, I want to say thank you so much to your entire team for all of the support that you've provided our municipality and being able to really present us, or support presenting the budget that really is grounded in financial best practices. It's greatly appreciated, and the fact that you found many anomalies that are now corrected, I think is really important for the community as we continue to go forward and really understand our financial position and opportunities for the future. So with that, at this point, I would welcome council questions. And again, we'll go through questions, then have our delegations, and then council amendments like we do with our regular reports. So Councillor Cressman.
Yes, through you, excuse me, through you, Mayor, to you, Mayor. I just wanted to clarification before I have my question. On the Office of Mayor and Council, that $83,550 should be reduced by 60 to 65,000, correct? It hasn't been corrected previously on this.
That's correct. It's not been corrected because once it is tabled, it's council that has to correct it.
So do we need a motion to that effect, or you're saying?
So yes, it would require a motion. I mean, we can do motions now. Generally, though, I was looking for clarification questions, then have our delegates, and then do.
The second question I have is, excuse me, I seem to have a frog that wants to relocate in my throat. The question is relating to, through you, Mayor, to the gapping that we thought was applied last year, but maybe wasn't applied. And I'm trying to get a handle on what was the overall impact of gapping on compensation, because I think number one, describe gapping, and then number two, what was the overall impact on the compensation that we were seeing in this budget?
Through the mayor, I hate to sound flippant, but I don't think there's anyone here who can describe it. And the overall effect was confusion. That does sound flippant, but it illustrates, I think, the frustration that KPMG and staff had trying to decipher what was meant by the 2025 budget. Some of it was very, very challenging to try to piece together what was intended here. And compensation gapping is at the very top of that list. Mr. Okrafka may have a better way of describing it, but I just sort of wanted to put that out there because we've all really struggled with trying to make sense of this.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, my recollection of the intent as expressed last year during the budget meetings was that all salaries for each group would be budgeted to the maximum salary that person could earn, but then using the compensation gapping line reduced back to what the actual would be. But I can't explain how those numbers add up and how they balance in looking at what I have from last year's budget. So I think that was the explanation. It made sense. We're going to budget the whole amount, but we're going to reduce it then so that it reflects the actuals. But somewhere in there, there's an amount that's missing to offset that based on my rudimentary understanding of math and budgeting.
Could we maybe then speak to what this budget correction does explain then?
This budget for compensation, and based on the work of KPMG, reflects the budgeting of positions that are FTEs for this year at the rates that will be paid in 2026. So it's an accurate reflection of the costs that you will incur in 2026 for staffing, but it does make the budgets for departments, when you lump in all the MERCs, I think I've learned a new term. Can't remember what it is, the employment-related costs. I can't remember what the M stands for, but mandatory. There we go. Sorry, it has been a bit of a challenge, but when you lump all those costs together, it does from year to year look like significant changes, but it really isn't because of that compensation gapping that was provided for last year. It's grid progression and the 2.6% COLA for the staff who have been approved by council to be here.
And for clarity on the grid progression, that's not an automatic thing?
Through Mayor Sal, no. Each employee of the municipality goes through a performance review, detailed paperwork filed with HR with recommendations, identification of challenges and growth opportunities for the next year, successes of the previous year, and each supervisor, manager, and director, based on their reports, prepares that for HR with a recommendation on whether that employee would proceed in the grid or not. So each employee has had a performance appraisal done in the fall of 2025 that sets what their wage would be for 2026 on the grid.
Thank you. Councillor Sadhu.
Thank you. I just want to piggyback off of Councillor Cressman's gapping question there. So just putting it in layman's terms, from what I'm understanding, last year it was assumed, let's say, an individual maximum they could make is $100,000. And the actuals, let's say if it came in at $80,000, that $20,000 difference, we're not sure where it went or what happened with it. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's basically the assumption, is that 20,000 would show as a negative under a compensation gapping line, but how those were reconciled across the corporation, I don't know, and I'm not sure that KPMG is aware either of the answer to that question.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Through the chair. So to clarify, every compensation line item throughout this budget is budgeted for the actual this year? Okay.
Yes, in case you're online, the answer was yes to that. Any other questions at this point in time, councillors? Okay, seeing none, and don't worry if you have more, you have lots of opportunities still for them. But we will invite up our delegates for this evening. I just need to get to that part on my agenda here. So we will now invite our members of public to comment on the proposed budget, and we will call upon the individuals who registered to delegate first, followed by, if there are additional people in the gallery who wish to ask questions or provide comment, we will take those individually at the podium. Each speaker will have 7 minutes to address council, and I would like to remind all delegates of some guidelines for participation. For those who are joining us in person, please proceed to the podium when you're called upon to speak. If you conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in immediate removal from the meeting, and this includes interrupting councillors, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others, and hate speech or defamatory comments. One last reminder for delegations, please do not take offense if following your presentation there are no questions from council. This is council's time to listen and reflect upon the opinions and ideas shared from our community members. And although it is rare, I'd like to remind delegates and members of the public that failure to adhere to appropriate decorum may result in your microphone being muted and or removal from the meeting. Out of respect for all meeting participants, I do also ask those in the gallery to remain seated unless exiting the chamber and avoid personal conversations and expressions of support or opposition to those speaking, in order to allow everyone to hear the proceedings as they occur. So I will now call up our first delegate, David Bernier. Apologies if I got your last name incorrect. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, David, and you will have 7 minutes.
Thanks for allowing me to speak tonight, Your Worship and Council. Thank you. My name is David Bernier, along with my family and I. We're residents of Baden. We moved here 3 years ago. Love it. Great place to live. Wanted to address some concerns today about the 2026 budget. Specifically around the 30% increase over the last 2 months, or roughly 30%. That includes, water, wastewater, and this is a historic increase. And then searching the open source, it looks like this puts us at number 1 in the province for 2 years. So that wouldn't be something we'd want to be number 1 at. Just by way of background, I've been 30 years in the mining industry, so precious metal, base metal minings. I've had the chance to manage multiple mines, so I'm familiar with budgets of this magnitude. In my professional world, 30% increase over 2 years is not something, we would be able to manage without offsetting by getting additional value or increased production, in this case, more value. So I want to table 6 points for you today for consideration before budget's finalized. One is on the catch-up. So I agree, rates were low. One of the reasons why we liked the area was the attractive tax rate. But I believe it's unfair to put this burden on the residents in such a short period of time. We already know that 26 and 27 might likely be the same. Again, hearing tonight, there's some true-ups within the budgets or right-sizing, whatever you want to call it. Again, don't think it's fair to pass that error onto the taxpayer. That's something that should be stretched over a long period of time. When I look at that, not looking at actuals and reconciling for the following year is neglect. It's not a mistake. These things happen year over year. Second piece is on capital scrutiny. Yeah, great projects, and listen, I'm not here to knock this process. You guys have a very hard job. It's not about that, but you sometimes have to think about it as being your money. Not having that 10-year plan, not having the long view on capital projects will make it challenging to say yet this is a go and this shouldn't be a go. You need a bigger view on this. And when I look at Appendix B, not a lot of trade-offs done on the capital versus OPEX advantages. Some of these projects might be able to defer. It might cost you more money, but again, over time, it'll catch up. A little bit on the compensation reporting, which I've gotten some clarity on from some of the members tonight, so thank you. If you look at the summary slide, it was about a 2.6% COLA. If you look across the board, with exception for fire services, the compensation is over 10% on each of them. So whether that's true-ups or corrections, I just don't think it's right that, the rest of us are living with COLA increases and others are getting larger increases. So again, my ask there is to go back and look at that. Not enough granularity within the report for us to find out if that's someone getting a raise or if that's something else. Fourth point is on administrative expansion and lean times. Understanding that the financial services team might have had some challenges, it's great that that's been addressed, but the narrative of increasing the team when you're asking the taxpayer to take on a larger burden, the timing doesn't mesh. So again, would look to that. Next part is on external support. Love KPMG, by the way. I work with them in mining a lot. This is not to do with them specifically, but there's a cost to having your own team and then having an external team. And the issue with having a good external team like KPMG is they do good work, and then it's hard to kick them out. You rely on them. So not only have you grown the team internally, I've heard tonight that you're keeping them on to help with the capital plan. I fully support getting the capital plan done, but doing that externally is, to me, doesn't fit the narrative. Last thing is on transparency and timing of this budget. So we're sitting here today. I really appreciate the chance to give input, but you have 6 business days for council to propose amendments. I don't think that's enough time. My ask is for the future is to have more time here. So just in closing, in the private sector, when you have increases in budgets and you're not offsetting by additional revenues or other value, you have to make hard decisions. You have to cut. So again, I'd ask the council and Mayor, return a budget that respects the financial reality of the people who are paying for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Were there any questions? Councillor Wilkinson?
Through the chair, no questions, but Mr. Bernier, I appreciate you coming up and speaking on behalf of yourself, your family, and everyone else that lives here. I share pretty much all of your concerns and comments. I would agree that in general, I will say, look, our staff have done a good job here in terms of the hard work that they put in, and it's not an easy task. However, I agree. I think when we start looking at where are these numbers coming from? What are we spending on? We're asking for, I think it's roughly a 5% increase in operating expenses. 2.6 of that is COLA, so the remainder of it, what? And I agree that level of detail is really lacking from here. And at the same time, and I think in some of the conversations I've had with my peers, is without having a proper capital plan, it's hard to predict what are we going to be at next year and the year after and then the year after. So I really appreciate you coming out and highlighting that, and I think that a lot of folks would share the exact same thoughts with you.
Okay. Any other questions for that delegate? Seeing none, again, thank you very much for joining us and sharing your input, David. I will now call up our next delegate, and that is Barry Wolf. Barry, thank you for joining us, and you will have 7 minutes.
Point of personal privilege.
So nobody's spoken yet, but okay.
So this delegate has sent us his speech that he's planning to say, and the parable that he is proposing to speak about, in my opinion, is making fun of the mayor, and I would ask that he speak to the numbers. This is a meeting about budget, but it's not about making fun of someone.
Okay. Thank you. I am just going to quickly look to our clerk because we don't often have a point of personal privilege, so if you'll just give me 1 moment on how to properly proceed here.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to council. So the point of privilege being that the councillor disagrees with the content being relevant to the subject matter this evening. So the mayor rules on it, whether you're going to sustain or not sustain that point of privilege, and there is opportunity to appeal that by council.
Okay. I mean, I'm willing to give the delegate an opportunity to speak to the budget. However, I don't disagree, and I would agree with your statement on what was provided to council earlier, that it does pertain to a point of personal privilege. But again, wanting to give the delegate an opportunity not to provide the parable that they shared with council, but if you would like to speak to the budget, I'm happy to hear that.
Thank you, Mayor Solomon. I've got a lot of admiration for this fellow, how you got all that done in that short period of time. I can guarantee you, I'm going to use the 7 and I'm going to be sitting down. I'm flabbergasted at this presentation. Actually, my comments and reflections have been based upon analysis of the materials that the township has provided. The stuff that came out in January 9th, and it seems that a lot of that stuff has been changed recently. Yeah, it's on. I'm speaking quietly. Surprise to Stuart. I provided everybody with a couple of documents, a spreadsheet being my analysis of the capital plan and a spreadsheet of the operating budgets. Do I get to start over?
I paused it while I moved.
And it seems that the documents that I've been provided and the rest of the public provided January 9th are outdated. I made a submission to one of the councillors. My ward councillor was absent at the time, and I said it appears to be that there's a starting point, a gap of $5.5 million. That was the document that the public was working on, and that was the tabled January 9th budget. So it was not balanced. Oops, we missed by 5.5. I'm also surprised here tonight that part of the CAO's budget includes a severance of a lot of money. I requested to an FOI for previous CAO the contract that person had, and there was no severance in that clause of that contract, and there was the opportunity to terminate employment with cause. I think we don't need to go into details, but I believe that there was termination with cause a couple of times, and we're paying $180,000 for legal fees. We should be defending that. In my opinion, that 170 or whatever it is should not be here. I concur with Dave about the FTE. We need a better reporting for how you have staffing. There's a little icon saying we've got 85 and 70, whatever, employees, but there's no breakdown. We don't know what each department's compensation is in terms of a job description. Don't need names, job description. How many dump truck drivers are we? What's the compensation? What's the FTE? Break it down, year over year over year. And then you can see how the FTE is or is not increasing. And my other concern about FTE is that I've heard comments about how we've increased FTE, we've reassigned FTE. Well, if you have department FTE, human resources reports, that will be providing clarity not only to internal staff, but I'd be surprised if councillors could answer that question, and we don't have a clue. And that's all part of your fiscal responsibility, your fiduciary responsibility, I would suggest. I've got a copy of the budget that is out of date. I'm seeing slides up here which are not in the original table budget. That's transparency. My description, my personal opinion, that's deceptive, because I'm making decisions, I'm making recommendations, potential amendments to my ward councillor based on information and data which is changing momentarily. That is not, I'll use the easy word, fair, but it's not right. That's wrong. I was going to not address the fact that the information that we got, but I will now because I can't tell my parable. Anybody's listening, go to my website, www.thisiswilmot.ca, and go to the bacon scrapings. You'll find the parable that is upsetting one of the councillors. It's a parable. It's a story. Literature is how we learn. Taking a look at the Appendix A, because in the budget, page 6, the version I've got anyway, it says, this document is intended to provide a clear overview of the 26 budget and the direction it sets. Additional detail is available throughout this budget and in supporting materials that accompany it. It was intended to provide clarity and transparency. It doesn't. It's incomplete. So I don't know how I can make recommendations of amendments that are valid. I've submitted 40-plus questions, 23 potential amendments, and I don't know if they still stand. Using Appendix A, which is one of the support documents, I made up a table, submitted it to Ash and Harold and Natasha to confirm that my numbers were right or not. I got no response from any of them, so I made the assumption they're right. I've transposed those 44 items off the 80 pages of Appendix A and added them up. My total is different from what the budget says. The budget says on page 7, capital $12,042,395. When you add up the numbers given as the support document in Appendix A for the 44 items, one is missing, number 26. That's the 26-year amount for that item. And the total does not come to 12 million. It comes to $14,218,435. That's a discrepancy of $2,176,040. I think part of the problem is you got a fire truck in there. That is the document that we're making our decisions on, and all of a sudden, oops, we forgot that. Oops, we missed that. I got to tell you, this is not a good budget. And I disagree with how the clerk has interpreted this. The legislation, Guide 2, says if a budget is not tabled by February 1st, it says the strong mayor shall. But if the mayor chooses not to, and there are municipalities where the mayor has chosen not to, then the budget goes to council. So what I'm saying, take the budget off the table. Withdraw it tonight. You've got the time that everybody wants. You can do all the amendments. Share the powers. Let the deadline pass. And it's legal, because all you do is you take it off the table. There is no tabled budget. You withdraw it tonight. It's off the table. And then you give it to council. All you do is you share the powers. It's legal. It's unusual. It wouldn't be nice if we could surprise the rest of the province how to work. Guideline 10.
Thank you, Barry. Were there any...
Thank you for your patience. I appreciate it, Natasha.
Were there any questions? Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, through the chair. Not a question, but I would want to just quickly confirm the tally of the capital projects. Your numbers are correct. And upon further questioning, this was meant to be a formal question later, but it's been brought to my attention that the fire truck is not included in the capital outlay. It's in the documentation, but it's not meant to be part of the capital outlay for this budget. Even if I remove that item of 2.6 million, it puts us in a favorable variance of saving $423,000 or $423,960. So again, to your point, the numbers are not necessarily being reported correctly, and I will confirm for you as well your observation of the document that's on the screen and the document that we were given this evening is different than the publicly filed document. I agree.
The other observation of where there's a surplus, if you want good news, the other one was in the non-taxation revenues. There's a surplus there.
Thank you. And again, to clarify, in the document that was publicly listed in the publication sheet, which I think is it's right after the first blank page, it does say that the website updated version will be the most relevant, and the numbers were updated upon noting the misstatements, which again were then publicly acknowledged tonight. Thank you very much, Barry, for sharing your thoughts. We will now call up our next delegate, and that is Don Casta. Thank you very much, Don, for joining us this evening, and you will have 7 minutes.
Pleasure to be here, Madam Mayor and Council. I'm an 18-year resident of Wilmot. I have a few concerns about the budget, three in general, but the first one is the most important one. In your introductory comments in the written document, you made it clear that the budget was developed under the Strong Mayor framework. You went on to reference the extensive involvement of Wilmot staff and the accounting firm. And then you added, I also wish to recognize the engagement of my council colleagues throughout the process. I had the opportunity to attend Councillor Wilkinson's town hall on Monday or Tuesday night, and one of the most important things that came out in that meeting to me was the disappointment expressed by the three councillors who were in attendance at what they felt was the less than optimal amount of input they were allowed in the entire process. There seems to be a disconnect here because you said earlier this evening that council had ample opportunity. It seems that at least three of the councillors don't agree to your interpretation of ample. My second concern is relating to the lack of detail provided about how the money will be spent. I'm prepared to support a 9.7% increase, but only if I'm confident that council has sufficient information to decide that the proposed spending makes sense. You indicated that the support of KPMG allowed the township to apply a more rigorous line-by-line approach to developing the budget, and I think that's a good idea. But it seems to me in the past, in the budget itself, there was more of, in the presentation, there was more of a line-by-line explanation of what the spending was to be. And I think our first delegate tonight mentioned something about the amount of detail required. My third concern relates to a significant number of inconsistencies in the document. A couple of those have been dealt with earlier, and I think some of them will offset some of my concerns, particularly regarding the mayor's budget and the budget for the CAO. I think, again, if that had been in the original document, it would have given many of us a better feeling about the overall document. But I can't adjust my figures for this, but it seemed to me we had identified about 13 inconsistencies in the figures, and some of those were substantial variances. One of them was about $700,000. Now that might have been corrected in what was said earlier this evening. However, the fact that there are those kinds of problems in the budget leads me to question almost the overall document. So I agree with the idea that's been put forward about maybe this isn't the right budget to be decided upon, and maybe what we do need is a document that reflects more input from our councillors. It seems to me that the Strong Mayor process has done something to affect the impact of the citizens on the whole consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don. Are there any questions, councillors? Seeing none, just one technical clarity, Don, and to be fair, I'm not saying that council can't have their own perspective, but via email, council was provided drafts. They were invited to meetings. Not every councillor took up that opportunity, but the opportunity was present and still remains present for every councillor. On to our next delegate this evening, and just one quick moment here. Sorry, I've lost my... Sorry, I got confused because it's another Dawn that we have coming up. We have Dawn Slawinski. Thank you very much, Dawn, for joining us this evening. And you will have 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for letting me participate in this meeting. I have a problem with the proposed budget. The proposed budget has a lack of transparency. In particular, page 24, Office of the CAO, there's an increase of 31%. Page 26, Office of the Mayor and Council, increase of 30%. Page 28, corporate and financial services increase of 29%. My question is, what makes up those increases? There is no rational reason given for any of these increases. There is not a detailed breakdown given. We need documentation in print. Show the one-time corrections are right sizing. I understand they're there, but we don't see them. Another question, how many vacancies are there in Wilmot Township staff? Are the wages of future employees not yet hired included in these figures? Are the future employees' wages calculated on an annual, yearly basis, or are they prorated? For instance, if we hire somebody in June, do we count the whole year's wage, or do we just count the 6 months? We need a list of approved expenditures. Example, the capital budget, which was mentioned, and they mentioned all the different projects that were seen, but they weren't on the document that we were able to see. If we had a list of them, we'd have a better understanding of what the budget is. We need a document showing a balanced budget. The other question is, how do we create the 2026 budget without a 10-year or 4-year financial plan using proper asset management? We're doing a lot of guessing. We're going to pay for that in the future years. Perhaps we should wait until we get a 4-year or a 10-year plan before we do the budget. Put that as a priority. We need this information. We need full transparency and complete documentation. Most of all, we need time. We need time to absorb this missing information. We, the residents of Wilmot, and you, Wilmot councillors, cannot propose or make amendments without complete and accurate information. We need more time to properly consider this proposed budget document. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Don. I did just want to note on the capital projects part, that is Appendix A. Each capital project is actually outlined in that whole appendices.
Thank you.
Including the ones noted tonight. Were there any questions? Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you. Through the chair, not a question, but rather a comment. Don, I appreciate you providing the questions that you desire answers to. It will be my intention after the delegations to get you answers to these.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have one more registered delegate at this time, and that is Allison Fleming. Yes? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear that. Thank you for that. Both, I think, our clerks can reach out because they have her contact details, but also if those in the gallery want to let her know, she can circulate her comments to council, and they can do that either through the clerk or emailing council@wilmot.ca so that those can be properly accounted for. Now, in terms of, this isn't normally our process, however, I did acknowledge I wanted it to be a part of the process, and that was to see if anybody in attendance, whether virtually or in person, had additional comments that they would like to add. Yes, and Stephanie, when you do come up, if you just want to note down your name for our clerks, and you're welcome to come up and delegate.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Gertz. Okay, I got a lot to say. I'll make it very quick. I can talk fast, but I'm sorry you might have to re-listen to it afterwards so that you can digest everything I'm saying. So thank you, evening, Mayor, member of the councils, and fellow residents. My name is Stephanie Gertz. I'm a resident in Wilmot Township. I'm here tonight to talk about the budget. One thing I do want to mention is that we are here tonight because the mayor chose to use strong mayor powers. From my understanding,
if a budget was not submitted by February 1st, it would then allow council to work together to create a budget. So now that like Barry was saying, now that the budget has been proposed, we now have to February 1st. From my understanding, I arrived late. There was a comment about that there will only be 10 or 15 days to recommend, but when I read the strong mayor powers, it did say that it had 30 days for citizens to recommend and council to create recommendations. After that, 10 days for the mayor to review those recommendations and veto them, and then 15 days for council and to re-veto those. So I'm not too sure if we're fast tracking that or if we can still keep that process. So we still, I guess, have 30 days. Okay, so skipping over a few things. So I'm just gonna jump into the amendments that I've reviewed. The committee has come together and many of us have really discussed that there needs to be more supporting documents. There needs to be a breakdown. People have already discussed that, but I'm hoping there can be an amendment tonight discussing when those complete breakdowns will be available, full breakdowns for councillors, and then some breakdowns available for individual residents to review in greater detail. So I'm hoping there'll be an amendment for that. The next thing is looking at the professional advisory service. I'm hoping that we can actually reduce that by around 50,000 and focus on finding cost-effective professional advisory services instead of outsourcing to, say, larger organizations like KPMG. I understand you have a contract with them already, but I'm not sure if you're locked into that or if you could use your counselor here, Councillor Wilkinson, who has expertise in finding services like exactly what we're using and maybe in a cost-effective measure. And even if we have to cut a cost in order to shift service professionals, I'm going to suggest that. The next one is corporate communications and external consulting. I think we need to reduce that by $15,000 instead of hiring external consults. Put that money towards clerk's department. Public engagement budget, again, to really engage people for long-term financial planning and doing having more transparent conversations, because I do know that that is a major issue right now with the community, and we're really struggling with trust and transparency. And so even if, when the budget passes, even continuing those conversations, because recommendations can still be made throughout the year. I'm going to skip over my next recommendation. Also, I'm going to talk about, so in 2024, a new position was made. The mayor stated it was to navigate the difficult process of council and ratepayer relations. The mayor has described this role in an interview as helping councillors and her manage their individual social media to keep community informed. As well as work-life balance. And then that new staff member mentioned determining how councillors feel, their hopes and dreams, and helping behind-the-scenes work. At a time when council was still new, the mayor was still new, they didn't have the information they might needed to run a council, hiring someone extra to help with some of these logistical work made sense. I'm suggesting in the new 2026 budget that you reflect on, do you actually need that staff member anymore to help you with work-life balance and determining your hopes and dreams? You mentioned that it was a council and ratepayer relations job, which is supposed to be reviewing, tracking, and responding to public inquiries on taxation and services, preparing newsletters, keeping residents informed, arranging and promoting town halls, cultivating positive relationships for community members to boost trust in the local government. Again, I would reflect on what tasks they're completing, if it relates to the job they were hired for, and is that a cost that a staff member we don't need this coming year. So my next one is the Petersburg water system upgrade. I know we've had a number of discussions in Petersburg about this, but I would love to see a breakdown in the budget regarding this, as well as the cost that's going to incur on residents in Petersburg. Residents of Petersburg will not only have the tax increase, but the additional, I don't know, they didn't give an exact number, between $30,000 or $50,000 per household to have that water running to their house, and that will be due. I think there's going to be a fee if you want to pay in installments, but it's quite a high fee to do that. So Petersburg residents, and part of it, will have that extra. One thing I did look at is that in other townships, that they have actually hired external private management companies to manage a communal water system. So again, I'm not too sure if there has been that analysis, if cost effectiveness of hiring an external consultant management company, because the current resident is getting older, he can't manage the well anymore, and that's understandable. So my proposal is a line-by-line breakdown of the allocated funds for Petersburg water system upgrade in the 2026 budget. I know it's not going to happen then, but there's still going to be planning and other things occurring, as well as a comprehensive modeling detailing the exact amount to be paid by residents and the mechanisms of those charges, as well as the cost-effective analysis comparing the current internal management approach. So looking at how are we approaching it now, and is there another cost-effective management, another cost-effective option? I just want to mention, 52 seconds. Okay, HVAC. I know we have that in our budget right now, but the argument is that it's 15 years old, it's preemptive, we need to change it because of high humidity in the complex and the potential for rusting. My thoughts, if it hasn't rusted already and things aren't looking like they're failing, push it off, or even put it that part of the money is put in reserve for the following year. But if we don't have the money now to do it, and it's not urgent, and things have not failed or got rusted or become rusted in 15 years, then I'm going to say that the extra year is not going to make a difference in if it's rusted or not. So Mayor and Council, I hope that some of my ideas might be adopted or considered. I urge you to adopt them. To demand the documentation, cut in administration, and ensuring responsible oversight of our major capital projects. Thank you. Oh, exactly.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Any questions? Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, through the chair. No questions, Stephanie, but I do appreciate what you've brought to the table here. There are some, I think, some action items that we can definitely look at this evening for sure. But I do want to just quickly comment on the Petersburg water system in terms of providing clarity on that. First and foremost, there is going to be a town hall for those residents on February 19th.
Yep, I know.
And that will be at the setting of the community center. There will be more detail there. I've engaged quite extensively with the folks on this, and I know our director, Vanderwall, has been very engaged in terms of putting pieces together. There's a pretty extensive budget related to this, and there's a few different options here. So I do take what you're saying and understand and sympathize with a lot of the residents there. We're working on a lot of these things, and I promise you there's full transparency and breakdown of everything that they're looking at right now. We're really working through the planning phase, but this is more so allocating the budget to make sure that the infrastructure is going to go into the ground and that it will be separated equally. Not everybody, I mean, there's still a lot of things to determine in terms of how it's going to be paid for, what the costs are going to be in terms of how every household is going to bear it, so on and so forth. So I don't necessarily know that that's something we should address through this budget, other than we should definitely allocate the construction costs, but I hear you on that, and if you do want to offline that, I'm happy to get you up to speed on it.
Perfect, thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, councillors? Just wanted to make one note in terms of your suggestion for council to be able to have all the information. Again, council, and you might not have been here for the start, that's why I'm reiterating it, but council did receive an email on December 9th of a draft format of this budget, which actually had way more projects than what has been proposed, and in that email they were invited to reach out to our CAO or directors to receive line-by-line information, and that was reiterated in a December 29th email, and to this point not every councillor has taken up that opportunity, but that does remain information that council can receive.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks. With that, are there any other members of the public who have a comment at this time? Okay, was there, oh, sorry, yes.
Sorry, Mayor.
Hi, Rory.
My son is at the ACES, and he's eventually making his way here. He may have comments. I don't know if that can be facilitated after the issues are closed, so.
Fair enough. I would say it is unorthodox. However, I'm happy to make an exception pending that we are still in our meeting at the time that he makes it here. If somebody could just let me know, okay. I'm happy at that point in time to entertain that. Yes. Was there anybody online? Nope, okay, there's no one online. So at this point, council again has the opportunity to ask questions and propose amendments. And again, amendments, although it is the framework in the legislation, it is just a motion. Councillor Cressman.
Yes, through you, Mayor, or to you, Mayor, or to whoever is appropriate, it's the directors. I know I talked to Director Kraft this afternoon about the asset or the capital plan or the asset management plan, call it what you want. I remember a presentation at AMO in Ottawa this past August. I purposely took in an asset management breakout session, and the comment was, if you had the choice to do two things and you could only do, or if you had the choice of doing only one thing, the thing you should be doing is an asset management plan, because the asset management plan drives the annual budget. And if you couldn't do them both, you should have the asset management plan. And I realize what has happened. I realized, you know, as I remember being informed that a separate firm was working on an asset management plan, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we should have it in December or early January. I thought, well, finally we have something to inform us in a budget because of how crucial it is. I realized things were more difficult than what was anticipated initially, and I'm not putting the blame on anyone, but I lament the fact that we don't have it, as some of you have indicated, because I think that is foundational to how you put a budget together, and I don't think there's anybody that would disagree with that fact around this horseshoe. I guess the other thing that I would hope is being developed is justification sheets that have detail on them. Some of us had the opportunity of being exposed to what is being done in Oxford County. I realize they have, or last year at about this time, I realize they have greater resources than what we have, but documentation of mileage on vehicles, documentation on number of repairs, age, I think those are all important for assets that move. I think for underground assets, I commend Director Vanderwall for what he's attempting to do and the monitoring devices that he's getting to determine. We're spending $1 million, according to this document, on infiltration and inflow. In other words, we've got water coming into our sewers at various points, and let's figure out a triage of how to correct that so that we can at least not have to pay for something that there was no intention of paying. And I'm not laying the blame on his department, but I think it emphasizes the importance of looking at underground linear infrastructure that is in need of repair. And then with that comes the roads that are above it. And I remember I went through this again today and see the urban road budget and what it's going to need, because once you start ripping up sewers and water lines, you got to replace the roads above it. And I see the projection over the next period of time to 2030 as tripling in terms of what we're going to have to spend there. So I would see some of our budget is going to be determined by initiation of projects in this coming budget year, but have a tail on it as we look at the needs of infrastructure that has to be updated in capital projects that are ongoing. I guess that's all to say I'm lamenting the fact that we don't have the pieces of information that I think we all want. And I'm at least pleased that sometime in my term, hopefully I will have the opportunity of seeing a 10-year asset management plan or capital plan, whatever the proper terminology is, and that it will be something that the next council can use as a foundational piece of information for budget development.
Well said. I believe both Director Okrafka and CAO Wilmer are going to add comment to that.
Through you, Mayor Sullivan, certainly the 10-year capital and the asset management plan are two documents, not one. They're two documents, but they need to work together. The township does have an asset management plan policy and an asset management plan. They're posted on the website. The issue has been the asset management coordinator has been on maternity leave for the last year, and we didn't keep pace with the updates that were necessary during that time frame. PSD, Public Service Digest, was retained late or early in August, and that process had been paused due to the departure of the previous treasurer. They're getting up to speed with the new treasurer and with our asset management coordinator, together with Mr. Vanderwall's group, who has put a lot of effort in additional information he can add related to how we've quantified our assets. And so that process is ongoing, but I don't want it to be perpetuated that we do not have an asset management plan. We certainly have an asset management plan. It just needs to be updated, and that work is underway.
Excuse me for my misinformation. Sorry, I should have got the definition straightened before I gave my rant.
Through the mayor to Councillor Cressman regarding fleet management or our vehicles, yes, we totally agree that we need to be more data-driven and to make more data-based decisions on that. And we are already in a process of implementing a more data-driven fleet management system using best practices of other municipalities.
Sorry, I don't want to dominate that. Just to follow that up, I didn't see any dump trucks or snow plows, and given the winter we had in this, did I miss them in the capital plan?
Through the mayor, I am quite certain we had a couple vehicles on fleet. I'd have to look through again where they were located, but yes, we did have a few items from our Public Works Department to ensure that we can maintain your roads, sewers, water mains, all those things appropriately. If you give me a few minutes, I can probably find out where they are, but there was a page in there.
Must have been my printer I printed off the original document and then put an X through the ones that didn't make it through the second tier. So
As people are collecting that information as to what page it's on, Councillor Dunstall, I saw your hand was up.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. One of the things that came through loud and clear last year during our budget process was that our constituents didn't trust us. Whether that was valid or not, it was one of the reasons why we did the service delivery report, was to get more into delving into how our operation ran, where there were efficiencies, where we could be better. Giving us this budget without the line by line, and I understand that, you know, a lot of people will say not everybody goes through the line by line. It's pretty big, it's pretty arduous, but it's very clear to me with last year and again with this year that transparency is key. And my question would be, and it may be to CAO Wilmer, is that would there be a possibility to have those line by lines? You have obviously worked on this budget and have that information. Would it be difficult for you to get that information together in a relatively short period of time so that we could share it with the public and certainly with council as well?
Through the mayor to Councillor Dunstall, that information is available to council, and we agree council should have access to that. We don't agree that it's necessary for the public to see a line by line. It's really not the public's role, it's council's role. Council has that opportunity and had that opportunity to meet with the mayor and staff Some took us up on the opportunity and some didn't. But the information is available for councillors.
Okay, we'll go to Councillor Martin next.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, I don't know if this is an appropriate time, but I would like to put forward a motion to make an amendment that in the mayor and council budget, we remove the $65,000. I'm certainly happy to defer to the clerk on the wording of that, but that would be my intent.
Yep, so that is part of what we're doing is entertaining motion, so this is perfectly appropriate. I would look to the clerk for wording. Councillor Cressman, is that seconding or is that a question? Okay, so moved and seconded, and I would just look to the clerk for that specific wording.
Sure. Through you, Mayor, to Council. I'll read this and you can confirm if it's satisfactory. That the 2026 Mayor's budget be amended as follows. Office of the Mayor and Council, Department Operating Budget, Compensation Line, reduction of $65,000. That's good.
Is that satisfactory for you, Councillor? Any questions or comments on the motion on the table? Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you. Through the chair. The question on the motion, I mean, I agree with making the amendment. However, without seeing a full transparent breakdown of where those funds are being spent, i.e. mayor's salary, councillor salary, salary for executive officer, and then the additional line item which would cover the fringe benefits, and I think Merck was mentioned earlier, it's hard to really understand what the ultimate number will be that's actually being funded for the executive officer. So to Councillor Dunstall's point, it would be nice to have those detailed sheets. So I'm curious maybe if there's staff that could provide insight into what that actual breakdown would be. Like, what are we actually reducing by $65,000 by making this amendment?
Through the mayor to Councillor Wilkinson, what happened here is that there's one staff who's off on a parental leave, and in backfilling that role, we added duties to another existing staff. And then we topped up that staff's salaries because essentially they're trying to do the best they can to do two jobs as one person. What we've realized later is that we had sort of double counted that in the Office of the Mayor and Council, that we budgeted 100% for the vacant role, the person on mat leave, and then we added 50% to enable us to compensate the person doing double duty. We didn't need to do that because we could have paid the double duty out of the vacant position. So that's where the $65,000 comes from. We're acknowledging it should not have been there in the first place.
Any other questions on the motion before us? Oh, okay. Yes, Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm just going to reiterate again maybe my question here. I understand you want to reduce the overall spend by $65,000, which would bring the total budget to $300,000. Just on quick math, again, these aren't exact numbers, but assuming what all of council makes and mayor makes, making a slight adjustment for COLA, that would mean that we are budgeting $150,000 for the executive officer? 140, excuse me?
Through the mayor, we're not here to talk about any individual's salary, but we also need to remember the mandatory employment costs. So there's base salary and then there's those additional costs on top.
The other thing that I will offer is council can go into closed to further discuss this particular item as it is pertaining to an identifiable individual. If that is something council would like to do, we can do it. I would just need a mover and a seconder and the motion to be moved. Councillor Wilkinson was, oh, sorry, I thought you were moving to press on your microphone.
Through the chair, I appreciate the suggestion that we could move into close, but ultimately, I think the fact that this is a budget line item that suggests compensation for mayor and council and our one employee, mayor and council salaries are public information. So I would suggest that once those remunerations are published, anybody could do the math and ultimately find out what it is. I don't know that going into close solves that problem.
So again, as an employer, we do have a responsibility when it is able to be identified. We run into this at the region as well all the time. I'm saying if you are seeking further clarification for that breakdown and line by line item, because it does wind up being identifiable, spoken in a public forum, we can go into closed for you to get that information. Councilor.
Through the chair, at this time, I will decline that. In general, the motion that is on the floor is a reduction of budget that is currently tabled. So, I mean, by all means, I'm in favor of it. We can discuss the other pieces later.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the motion before us? Seeing none, all those in favor, that carries unanimously. Councillor Cressman.
Yes, two things. First thing, apologies. I don't know why my printer didn't print that last page of capital projects on machinery, and I'll go back and give it a kick or a swat, but I apologize for that. I would make a motion that council forego their COLA increase for the 2026 budget year.
So that's moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. Just going to confirm with the clerk if you're okay with her wording that she's drafted up from what you said.
Okay. Through you, Mayor. So wording similar to the last, that the 2026 Mayor's budget be amended as follows. Office of the Mayor and Council, Department operating budget, compensation, remove COLA increase for members of Council.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair, as a clarifying point in terms of language, do we have to include council and mayor in that position or in that particular description?
So legislatively, mayor is a part of council. So that will involve all 6 of us.
So you're saying, excuse me, through you, Mayor. So you're saying the redundancy is that mentioning the mayor separately, is that what you're saying?
Through the chair to Councillor Cressman, I guess what I'm getting at is I want to make sure that if we're suggesting that we're foregoing COLA, which I agree with, will be inclusive of the mayor as well, and it's been clarified that that will include also. Enough for me. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, and that carries unanimously. Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through Mayor. I was wondering if, as we go along with these motions, if, and I'm not sure who it would be able to let us know what the impact is. Both the amount and the percentage would be appreciated if we can get that information.
I do believe that information, if not already available, can be made available tonight. If we can just give staff a few moments to get us that update. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Through the chair. I appreciate the amendments that have been passed thus far, but I did want to highlight there was a brief comment earlier that the online document would supersede what's being presented here. I just want to highlight that in general, and I probably should have stopped this when it was mentioned, but the online document that is currently presented is not up to date in terms of showing the total funding source or full revenue. So it is out of date online and missing the key information. And additionally, our capital attachments do include a fire truck that has been communicated to council is not included in the capital outlay for this year. So I just want to be clear, if we are discussing and voting on the online document, it is not correct.
So I would look to our communications staff. And what I was in particular referencing was that there is an actual statement in the online document that it'll be the online document. So if somebody had printed off a version and then it is since updated, it is to be the online document that is accurate, but I would look to our communications staff for clarification on when it was updated.
Through you, Mayor, yes, we added the 5 million that was missing that Mayor addressed in the beginning of the presentation. It is in the online version of the budget document, and the fire truck was removed from the capital justification sheets.
I'm sorry, but through the chair, I'm clicking on the revised presentation that is available to the general public, and no, that is incorrect. Through the chair, I did refresh the page multiple times to ensure that I was on the most recent version.
Through you, through the chair, are you looking at the agenda or the website?
Through the chair, I am referring to the agenda because we are in council discussing the agenda.
Okay, I think that has been noted. For clarity, what we are discussing is the updated numbers that were presented. I did not personally confirm the agenda component. And again, what I was referencing was the online budget booklet, but staff will confirm right now that things are up to date. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'd like to further comment on the information that's been communicated from the staff side as well as the mayor regarding information provided in meetings or opportunities provided. First and foremost, yeah, I do not dispute back in June, council absolutely had an opportunity to meet with our former financial staff to communicate our wish list in terms of what we desire in a budget. I can share with you at a high level, I requested certain projects be accelerated for my ward in particular, as well as looking at an overall spending reduction and a summary of cuts. Half of the members that were present in that meeting are no longer with this township. And therefore, I would suggest that the details discussed in that meeting are not necessarily reflected in this budget. I don't dispute that in December there was a budget summary presented to us, which in essence was 17 pages of the same tables that we're seeing before us today. Upon review of this document, I would agree that there is an overall lack of detail. And to Mr. Slowinski's point, what makes up these increases? Where's the rationale for the increases in spending? Why is there not a detailed breakdown given? And well, it was offered to individual council members the opportunity to go into a closed one-on-one meeting with the acting director of finance and the mayor and the CAO to discuss these items with line by line. I find it very hard to stomach that these details are not being provided to the public. We're here to administer tax dollars collected from the ratepayers in this township. I think we owe it to them to say that if we're going to increase spending by 30% in a department, we should be able to look at where... Slight interruption there. I believe we should have the ability to look in detail as to where this money is being spent, ultimately. That detail is lacking. And I find the lack of transparency very, very disappointing and hard to stomach. It should not be for council only. If the public wish to examine the spending details and the line items, that is 100% their right. And if I was given that information, I would broadcast it to the public because it is their money that we are here to discuss and spend. So I would like to table a motion that we table the full line by line, inclusive of the 2023, 2024, 2025 budgets, including the variance analysis that was completed that informed the 2026 line items. I think it's only fair, and I know KPMG is a great firm, so I know you guys have this information, and it should be fairly easy to string together. That would be my ask at this time.
Okay. So that has been moved by Councillor Wilkinson, seconded by Councillor Sadhu. The clerk is just asking if you can repeat the specific language again so she can accurately capture it.
Thank you. Through the chair. I apologize, it's going to be lengthy, but in essence, release, and I'm going to scratch 2023 because I think 2024 is the earliest, but I would like the line-by-line detailed spending for each department to be released to the public so that we can properly scrutinize these numbers and properly see where the money is being spent. I would concur with some of the delegations this evening that the number overall is not necessarily something that is that isn't palatable. I mean, it's high, but as long as we can back up and justify where the money is going, then it makes sense. So the wording should be, please release the analyzed 2024, 2025 rebuilt budgets that also show the variance that inform the 2026 budget. And then the departmental cover sheets should be informed to show where the spending is going. So when we see an increase in operating expenses, just for example, in the office of the mayor and council, we should know that where each of those items is going. To further clarify, what I'm getting at is if we look at the office of the CAO, we talk about an increase in recruitment and legal and other expenditures. We should be able to see what we're spending on legal, because that could potentially inform other things down the road.
Okay, so that motion has been moved and seconded. Just giving the clerk a moment to finish typing that. I do have clarity because the language you used, you said reanalyzed budgets for, I just want clarity. What was done in the zero-based budgeting was taking the actuals, not the budgets per se. So
through the chair, this is a valid addition. I would agree with your amendment that it shouldn't necessarily be the budget, it should be the actuals.
Okay.
Because that will show us that the work has been done.
Yes. Okay, that's fine. Councillor Sadhu.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment on that. I want to thank Councillor Wilkinson for bringing up that motion. Frankly, this shouldn't even have got to here. I do recall, I think it was 2 years ago, I had asked for a line-by-line budget, and I figured that would have been moving forward. Listen, we're the public's first line of scrutiny. So we can't just say, yes, I sat in a one-on-one meeting, just trust us. We have a teacher or a former principal in the audience here, and I'm sure many times he said, show me your work. This is not showing me your work. This is an overview 40-page document of, it's essentially a summarized document. We've been beating the drum year over year. We want more transparency. We want more transparency. I feel like this is taking a step back. I'm not saying the details and the numbers are not adding up or not jiving. I'm not saying that at all. The transparency around it is the common theme I've been hearing from people. We need full transparency, and to suggest the public doesn't need to see a line by line, I disagree with that. It's the public's money. If they want to see where the money's going, they should see where the money's going. Outside of anything of personal names, salaries, well, we have the sunshine list. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to go and see how much our public officials are making. But unfortunately, this is taking a step back. We need to rejig how we're doing this. And to Councillor Wilkinson's comment of spending the money is fine. We do need to spend money. Things are getting more and more expensive. But we need to have a breakdown of where the money's going, a 10-year capital forecast of if it's 9.7 this year, where is it going next year? What are we rejigging? And what can we expect moving forward? We can ask them to reduce the budget from 9.7 to something lower, but what are the ramifications, right? These are the more transparent things we need to move forward. So I wholeheartedly agree with his motion and look forward to hearing from the rest of the council.
Any other comments or questions on the motion? Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Obviously, transparency is the theme of the evening, so I think that's the word. But I also find that presenting a financial document of this magnitude, there were enough errors that it made me a little anxious about the integrity of the document. And please believe me when I say I'm not questioning staff or you, Mayor, but my feeling is when I'm looking at a financial document and then I hear, well, okay, well, I'm sorry, we forgot this, or we moved this, or we did that. Second or third time, I'm starting to think, okay, the integrity of this document now, from my perspective, makes me wonder. So I agree with Councillor Wilkinson and Councillor Sadhu, and Councillor Cressman has mentioned it. I've mentioned it. So I do think that it's important for our public to have the same access that we do. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments at this time? Councillor Cressman?
Yes, this would be more a question of our CAO and of you, Mayor. What is our concern with making it available? And so I think we want to, I mean, if it means we as an entire council can go into closed with our leadership and look at it, I think that's what I missed based on how we went through the budgets previously. I'd like to hear what my other compatriots are thinking and what their view is. And it's obvious I don't have everything put together because I was misinformed on what I call an asset management plan and a 10-year capital plan. Regardless, I think it's those clarifications and that input that adds the amount of rigor and oversight to a budget, and how that happens. I think, so I guess to make my question shorter is, what is the downside of releasing the to the public?
So through the Mayor to Councillor Cressman, as you said the first time when you asked the question, what's the concern? There is no concern. The information is there. We stand by it. It's available to council. It has been available to council. And if you want to share it with the public, that's your prerogative. As I've said before, I don't think it's necessary for the public to see it. It's council's role, but I don't have a concern with sharing with council.
And because you asked the question of both of us, in addition to that, the reason the budget document was presented the way it was is, again, striving for best practice. And so looking at CD Howe's transparency of municipal documents and how they rate municipalities on transparency, it's quite interesting actually that it's not necessarily full disclosure, but that it's actually about digestible information for the public. Again, I don't have concerns of the information being made public, more so from a functional perspective. The tax levy does not pay for every line item. In fact, it's only approximately 50% of what makes up our revenues. So it's more so from a logistical perspective and moving towards what larger municipalities do in terms of best practice. But again, I don't have concerns with the document being made public. As has been stated many a time, the work was done, the work exists. So if that is the wish of council, which it has been in the past, that's perfectly fine if that's their wish. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just maybe want to add something. And I apologize that my frustration comes through, but and it's not meant as a slight to staff. I want to be very clear on this. You guys all work hard. You guys have put this together. However, I have a heightened sense of frustration and a heightened sense of duty because of the circumstances that this township finds itself in. And I think over the past number of years, we are still working on perfecting this process. But I think ultimately that, the more transparent we can be, the better, and it will help everyone understand where we're going and how we're spending the dollars. Maybe not everything will be fully informed or fully funded, but at least the information will be there, and it will certainly provide more clarity and transparency to individual members of council. And I know there are members of the audience as well as the general public that would agree. So hoping, and I apologize, Amelia, that maybe you can reread the motion as you have crafted it. That would be helpful.
Of course, through the mayor to council, the draft motion is recorded that council directs staff to release the line-by-line actuals for the 2024 and 2025 budgets by department, including variances, and that department cover sheets, including line-by-line information for the 2026 budget, be provided.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I just wanted to question CAO Wilmer's comment, that he would give it to council and it was up to us to share it with public. My question to you is, why if council is asking for it to be shared to public, that there's a hesitancy on your part to put it on the website.
At risk of repeating myself, it's because I do not see that it's the public's role to evaluate and look at a line-by-line budget. It's council's role.
Through you, Mayor, and I understand what you're saying. We have a lot of people within our community that have financial backgrounds, and it's important for them to take a look at it. And I guess I'm pushing here, saying if we as council are asking for it to be made public, then my understanding is it should be made public if we vote on it, and that's what we all decide. So that's what I'm pushing back on here.
So, to clarify, he's not saying that if council makes a direction, he won't execute it. The question that was asked of him is, what is the risk, or why wouldn't he post it? He's not saying that he wouldn't if council directs it.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I would direct CAO Wilmot to share the line-by-line with the public.
So you can't, as an individual councillor or anybody of council, independently direct staff. There's currently a motion that is requesting that. That is what we're dealing with. So if that is what you'd like to see, it would be voting in favor of the motion.
Okay, perfect. I wasn't sure that that the public piece was actually in there, but if it is, then I'm good with that. Thank you.
Yes, it is in there. Councillor Sadhu.
Thanks. I just want to jump in and make a quick note. I can see both sides of the argument as far as where CAO Wilmot is coming from. However, to put things into context, Wilmot has been in this situation for 20 years leading up to this. It was very much of, trust us, we got this, we're in great financial shape. So we're a very unique municipality as far as, I don't blame the public for not trusting the corporation and saying, you don't need to see that, everything's hunky-dory, because, yeah, we are in a bit of a pickle. It wasn't illustrated throughout the years. So just adding context to, we may not be like every other municipality where you don't necessarily need to show a line by line, et cetera, but we are in a unique situation in Wilmot where people are expecting more and more transparency. So that is the angle that we're coming in from, saying we need more information, we want to share more information, and we want to start building your trust back.
Okay. Are there any other comments? Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, I just want to make a couple of comments to weigh in on this discussion. I think a part of me thinks I should vote against this motion because I'm in favor of the best practices, and I think that the idea of digestible information is important. I think many people in the community aren't that interested in line by line, but they want to make sure we have a balanced budget. They want to make sure we're not increasing taxes unnecessarily. Having said all that, though, I'm certainly not opposed to transparency, and I appreciate all the work that the staff have done, and so I feel like if I vote against this motion, it looks like I'm against transparency, and that's not my intent at all. So I guess in part, moving forward on this motion, I think I will vote in favor of it, not because I don't like what's happened this year. I want to make another comment about I had ample opportunity to get information. Not every councillor took up the opportunity to do that, and so Councillor Dunstall and I had a public meeting in September, and we asked for input from our constituents. I had opportunity to meet with the mayor, I met with the CAO, I met with the deputy CAO, and there was ample opportunity to go line by line. And so I want to speak to the earlier delegate that had made the reference that councillors didn't have the opportunity. We did. So I just want to make those comments in voting in favor of this motion.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on the motion before us? Councillor Cressman.
Yes, in terms of, through you, Mayor, in terms of the process, I think I held a town hall meeting. I think Rory was there and others from New Dundee in advance of a budget coming out. And that's an unusual practice given what we used to do, or at least last year, when there was a budget tabled and people were reacting to what was on the table. And so I think it was a new concept to sit, as I had indicated in this chamber, what do you want in the budget? Well, I think if I made my point a year ago, we don't have a lot of money to dream. We have to figure out what our essentials are, as our first speaker said tonight. I was looking for his identification of what services should we cut, because I think that would be the useful piece in terms of looking at a budget, in terms of what can we cut. And I'll have some comments a little later about our debt commitment and where we stand against the provincial standard. So all to say, with the clock ticking, I think there, as I understand it, the budget was tabled in early January the 9th, and as such, that's why the clock is ticking. I wish I could have had meetings and heard my fellow councillors' concerns early in that process. I realized holidays were booked and you don't want to interfere with cruises and etc. But all to say, I think in future to have some of these in that 30-day window would be very useful earlier in the process, so we're not fighting against the clock ticking in the background.
All right, and just to that, I don't disagree. Again, one thing that I very much wanted was all of council to be able to be present, and I know myself and another councillor actually changed flights and our own vacation times to be able to work around others around this horseshoe to be able to all be present. So appreciate that there is a time crunch. Again, the information does exist, and again, council has, whether they chose to take up the opportunity, had access to further information or question clarification during this time period. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Through the chair, I don't want to necessarily prolong this anymore, but on the topic of time, it's occurred to me that perhaps we should define when this information will be available. And I want to maybe look towards staff to have a suggestion as to when they could accomplish what we're setting out to do here. I certainly don't expect you to be able to do this overnight.
Could I ask, somebody is asking on council for a recess right now for a bio break. Can I ask that we take a bio break and then come back so that staff can discuss how long they think it can effectively come back?
I think that works for me.
Okay, and then also I'm going to say it because I do see young Mr. Farnan is now in the audience with us, so after we then vote on the motion before us, I will allow him to come and make his comments to council. Yes, but I'd be looking for a mover and a seconder for a quick recess. Moved by Councillor Stu, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. All those in favour, and that carries unanimously. All right, I'd be looking for a motion to reconvene at 8:18, moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. So we do have the motion on the floor before us. The question was asked in terms of timing, and I believe that CAO Wilmer will speak to that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we've had an opportunity to confer with our colleagues from KPMG, and there is quite a bit of work to be done to bring together all the spreadsheets so that they're useful to council and the community, and in particular also to make sure that private and personal information is not divulged. And so the best we can do is to provide the line by line with the past 3 years actuals by the end of next Wednesday.
And again, this doesn't stop council from coming in and seeing the line by line with directors and CAOs in the interim. But in terms of it being digestible for the public and not just a spreadsheet in multiple pages, that is. Councillor Cressman?
Just as, through you, Mayor, to you, from a point of clarity, if we came in, could, for the sake of efficiency, the most that could meet with you would be 2 through the municipal act?
So to not reach quorum, I mean, I don't need to be there. Our CAO and our directors have access, so you could do a maximum of 3 members of council at any time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the other thing also to make council aware of, because we still don't internally have the financial staff / our new treasurer is literally starting on Monday, this will be work that KPMG will have to undertake, so that will include additional billing hours. And that is part of why it's also Wednesday in terms of they have other commitments, because this was not work that was originally anticipated. Not saying it's not possible, just simply providing that full perspective. And Ash, yes.
Through you, Mayor and CEO Wilmer, definitely supportive of the line by line, but this is equivalent, and I not only just support the public sector in my practice, but I'm also very well versed with listed companies in the Toronto Stock Exchange, both from an audit perspective and accounting perspective. Releasing line by line detail we have, that was for the purpose of internal records, transparency internally, and the treasurer coming up, picking it up for the future. It is equivalent of, let's say, a Loblaw releasing their entire general ledger line by line to the public, which would be thousands of lines. We have thousands of lines. So that's why we're requesting a little bit of time to make it consolidated. There's salary information, because the budget, just to visualize how it looks like, and council has access to that, there's a spreadsheet, a tab, it's a workbook for a department, let's say CEO Wilmer. It has the details of 2023, 4, 5 actuals and budgets. Now, to be very clear, there's no accounting staff at Wilmot, and that's not unique to Wilmot. A lot of organizations in the country are struggling for accountants, and that's why other commitments are overshadowing us as well, which is a separate issue, but somewhat related. So there's that detail. It explains the reason for the variances, and then it ties into supporting tabs. Where we had contracts available for 2026 expenses, there's screenshots of those contracts, and there's likely some private information, there's salaries information, and with capacity constraints, cost, we've been very careful with our costs, and that's our discussion just now, to summarize this information into more digestible format so the entire financial records of the municipalities are not released, which will confuse people who are non-accountants, that's where the request is coming from. So we would like to kind of summarize it a lot more detail than this, but releasing the entire general ledger to the public is something we had concerns about, and that's what the comment was about.
Councillor Cressman?
So am I hearing that this would take dollars and time, and we'd have it for 1 day before the final decision was made? Is that correct?
So what they have surmised is that by Wednesday, and then the meeting would be Monday. The February 5th note that's in the presentation is just for clerks to give their legislated required time of notice for the public for a meeting, but we don't need to have the final amendment wording. It's just if council wants to have the meeting, clerks need to know by February 5th that the meeting's going to happen so that they can publish an agenda. But the meeting would be for Monday the 9th. Yes, Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, is it appropriate, or could we ask what the approximate cost would be? So are we talking 5,000, 10,000, 30,000? How much will this increase in terms of time and the budget, to give us a sense of what it is that we're asking for?
If I may, I would estimate the cost to be around $4,000 to $5,000 extra. And that's the level of scrutiny I've kept on my team to keep the cost under control. I heard a comment about a small firm, and I just want to say one sentence: you get what you pay for. That's all I got to say about that.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Salonen. And so two things. I'm glad that you're here, Ash, and I'm not saying anything negative about KPMG, and I don't think anybody on council has. And so I'm very happy because it gives us a sense of certainty, and I appreciate that you've been working on this. So I did not come to the meeting tonight thinking that this is necessary, but I'm not going to oppose transparency, and so I would be in favor, and I think for a cost of $4,000 or $5,000, if it helps our public have more trust in our process, I'm in favor of that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the motion before us? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Now, I did say I would go back to young Mr. Farnan. I understand that you were over swimming at the rec complex earlier today, so you are welcome to come up and delegate. You will have 7 minutes, and thank you for joining us.
Sorry. Hello, my name is Michael, and I am delegating on this. Mayor, councilors, we often talk about fiscal sustainability as if it's a math problem. It isn't. It's a moral one. When we ask a senior in New Hamburg for another $24 a month, we aren't just adjusting a line item. We are dipping into their grocery budget or their heating bill, or their ability to stay in the home they built. I want to thank staff for the transparency in this year's KPMG review. We finally know where the leaks are. But as we move toward this 9.7 increase, our job is to ensure the burden doesn't break the community we're trying to save. We're putting $12 million into 44 projects. That's a massive commitment to our roads and bridges. But infrastructure isn't just concrete. It's the community safety and well-being of our residents. Growth brings challenges. Rural crime isn't just a headline. It's a fear for our farmers and residents. Supporting groups like Crime Stopper Wellington through our community grants isn't nice to have. It is a vital part of our safety net. We have a housing median that is frankly terrifying for a rural township. I support the affordable housing reserve, but money in a bank account doesn't house a teacher. We need to leverage our secondary plans for Baden and New Hamburg to demand attainable density. My closing ask is this: let's match our 9% capital increase with a 100% commitment to transparency, quarterly reports, public dashboards. Let's show the residents the value of their $24.
Thank you very much, Michael, for
You're
coming to
welcome.
council. I think you are also our youngest delegate, at least in my time here, and one of our more articulate. So I very much appreciate you coming.
Thank you, Mayor Sell.
Thank you. Absolutely. And Michael, one thing before you do go, in terms of your ask, I'm happy to say that we have a new treasurer starting on Monday, and that is part of what he is going to be doing and that KPMG is doing is having more regular reports to council and to the public. So you should see that coming soon. But thank you again for joining us. Now back to our regularly scheduled part of the meeting, back to questions and comments or amendments at this time. Councillor Cressman. Councillor Wilkinson.
Oh, thank you, through the chair, and thank you to Councillor Cressman. I actually wanted to shift my focus to the capital budget. And I guess, you know, first and foremost, one of the items that I had highlighted earlier was doing the math. There appears to be a somewhat variance in terms of what's presented and what the number is listed on the budget. And I can identify that if you remove the fire truck from the listing, that gives us 43 projects, but it's short of about $430 some odd thousand in terms of what we're reporting on the actual outlay on the cover page. So I'm just curious if anybody can speak to that, please.
Through the mayor, I can start, and then I'll pass it down to department staff. I suspect that the difference is that for annual programs that are in the capital budget, we didn't do a sheet for each and every one of those. But I stand to be corrected on that. I think the budget sheets were mostly focused on one-time projects, and in some cases, on annual projects that are recurring.
So can that information be provided, I guess, in the line-by-line component? Can that be taken as direction to staff that that variance be explained? Yes, okay. Ash?
Yes, we have explanations, just have to go back and it can be documented. I consent with CEO Wilmer that there's 2-3 projects for which the capital sheets may not be there. And the fire truck, yes, it was discussed and that capital sheet should not have been there, but it was discussed that when will the cash outflow for that occur, and it will not occur until 2027. That's why it is not in the 2026 budget. The proposed amount is correct. It's the capital sheets, like CEO Wilmer suggested, a couple of them can be drawn up and it's an easy explanation. And I hope the fire truck explanation is reasonable as well to understand. So.
One thing I did just want to note as a point of clarification on what was on the township website in terms of up to date. What I was referencing in our comms team is the budget part of the website, and the budget booklet and the documents there are the ones that it is noted in it that these will be the most up-to-date ones to note. I appreciate that what I believe was being referenced was tonight's agenda. And as with our standard process, when there are amendments after the addendum agenda goes out, those then go out once the minutes for that agenda are published. So just wanted to make note that is following our regular process, but also wanted to clarify the confusion. Councillor Cressman now, I believe we're back at.
Yes, through you, Mayor. I'm referring to page 7, and this was in the, what I printed off the agenda, where it talks about the budget at a glance, budget snapshot, and the debt financing. And I'm asking that the new debt we're taking on, it's listed here, our debt financing is $4,865,381. Does that include the new debt that we're going to be taking on, or is that would be additional? Because I think there was some debate when we take that debt on based on when some of these projects come. And then I have a follow-up question, so maybe just...
Through the mayor to Councillor Cressman, that is the additional debt.
So that is that includes the additional debt, or it is it is additive to what we had existing.
Yes, the latter. This is debt that is new in 2026.
Because I'm looking here at the statements that I guess I was at a breakout at Roma and at another one in Ottawa where it talks about a provincially regulated maximum of 25% of adjusted own source revenues, property tax, user fees, etc. You shouldn't be beyond that, and I think our former CFO said we were going to sneak above 30 to 32%. Now, I just did my quick math and looked at this, and I might be wrong, as I have been on several occasions this evening, but I don't know what that number is in terms of us approaching the provincial maximum of 25%.
Through the mayor, we can take that back and get clarification, but I'm pretty sure that the 25% refers to the payments as opposed to the capital, that in any given year, not more than 25% of your budget should be payments towards debt.
Okay, so that was where I was getting confused. I figure when my accountant gives me stuff, he says, this is what you're going to have to pay in debt and interest for this coming year in terms of your operation, and I was assuming that was what that number was. So my apologies. Yeah, I would appreciate that, because I think we were seeing us peaking out above 30.2% or 32% and not coming down till 2031 or 2030. And I guess I'm just trying to figure out how serious is that from the province's point of view? Does it impact revenue and grants we get from the province? I think that's just my due diligence on trying to figure out the impact.
Ash?
Through the mayor, on an unrelated note, I wanted to respond to a previous question and the motion on the reduction of 65,000 from the said budget, and then the COLA reduction from council and mayor budget. So the revised impact on the levy would be a reduction from 9.7% increase to 9.22%.
Thank you. And one other item on the debt, which again, KPMG's team that's doing the long-term financial planning will be bringing forward more information, but what did come out in this budget process was the debt that council approved to budget for last year. Nobody actually went to the region and got it issued. So we did not actually take out the debt that council accounted for last year. Staff can get us the total, but that again is something that is being provided in the long-term financial planning information. But that was something that, yes, came forward in some of the assumptions and trying to find what happened. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, through the chair. On the topic of debt and looking at this, so if we are looking at lowering the overall tax levy, is our primary source of, we're looking at lowering the tax levy cost to the taxpayers. I guess my question for you is regarding debt. What items are we looking at to lower the debt cost? Are we taking this from the actual levy increase, or are we taking this from the debt financing that we're trying to obviously avoid? I guess what it's directing me towards is, should we be looking at capital projects and potentially looking at those to reduce that particular item? Or are we going to attribute that to the levy?
Through the mayor to Councillor Wilkinson, I would suggest that it would not be helpful to look to capital projects to reduce that debt, in the sense that we all know, the citizens know there's a huge backlog of capital projects. You're just pushing off to make a bigger problem tomorrow. So I think we've already reduced the capital projects from 15 million to 12 million this year for the purpose of making this a balanceable budget. Even at that point, we do have this 4.8 million of new debt. But I would not suggest deferring capital projects to save now, because it's going to cause a bigger problem later. If you don't want to raise taxes and there's nowhere else to save, then yeah, I suppose that's the only way to do it, is defer capital and bring down the borrowing.
Councillor Wilkinson again.
Thank you. Through the chair, I guess, you know, the next question I would have is regarding the capital items. Your point is well taken. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of spending here that are items that need maintenance, that need to be fixed, that need to be addressed. I think there might be a few items that are nice to haves, or potentially, you know, $10,000 here is a saving for something that might cost $20 million. I don't know if that's necessary. But I guess my question is, how are the capital projects selected? Because it does seem like some are, yes, very targeted towards the dire straits and the maintenance that we need to spend capital on, but there are others in there that I might personally identify and look at and say, do we actually need this?
So to speak, through the Mayor, to speak very generally about this, each of the department heads identified the capital projects that they felt were most urgent and important. Those were then put through another filter where it was put to the test, and if they weren't seen as both urgent and important, that those were either delayed to next year or put off indefinitely. So it's the urgency and importance is the key thing. I think the other element of it is the source of funding. If they're taxpayer based, then there's certainly an extra layer of scrutiny on that. But if there's grant funding available, or the development charge is based, or funded through a different source, or even the water and wastewater utilities, then those are the ones where we're really not motivated to defer them. They're necessary. Let's get on with them now. They're probably going to be more expensive in 2 or 3 years. The other point that I would note of the new debt for 4.8 million, 2 million of that is for the Petersburg water system, which we're taking on behalf of the local improvement project. So that's an example, but it's a pretty big component of that new debt.
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I just want to comment on CAO Wilmer's comment. One of the things that got us in so much trouble was deferring every single year, because we don't want to raise your taxes, because it raises our taxes too. So we don't want to do that. So we would kick it down the road until it became dire. And then we had to look at huge numbers that disrupted everyone. So I just want to make sure that we don't go down that path again and end up with another 18 or 20 or 30% in a couple of years. So I just want to make that statement.
Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Cressman in a minute.
I'm concerned. I'm asking to, can I circle back to the question on debt we didn't take out last year? Why was it, if we had approved it, were projects not completed that we had approved? Was the construction, I think the summer construction season with the dryness of weather, which Director Vanderwall and I had a little bit of fun back and forth about, complaining about, he was praising the weather and I was complaining about the dry weather, but we'll leave that where it is. What was where did we not need that debt last year?
Through the Mayor to Councillor Cressman. At the time that so debt is issued in the spring and fall, and at the spring call for debtors, at that time we didn't need it. So we deferred until the fall. As of September, there was no one on staff who could accurately say, what did we need this for? So we politely declined, because those of us who were here didn't have enough to say, oh yeah, it's this project that we need. We realized the error of our ways very late in the year when we started to have cash flow problems. And think, oh yeah, okay, that's probably why we needed to take out, if I'm recalling that, and I don't trust my memory on this, it was somewhere between 1 and 1.5 million, I think, was the amount of debt that was budgeted for. So yeah, towards the end of the year, we did need that 1.5 million, but we found a way to scrape through.
I think it was Councillor Martin that I had next on my list, yes.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Sallin. I was just wanting to ask a question of Director Catania regarding the HVAC. I know one of the delegates had said, is that something that we could put on hold? My understanding is that there were some problems in the past year, and in fact, I remember speaking to you about a resident complaining about the one pool and the water temperature and things, and I thought it was all interrelated, but maybe I'm wrong, that the HVAC system, there were some signs of wear that were being experienced, and so I thought that there's a danger if we delay it too long.
Through you, Mayor Sallin, to Councillor Martin, correct. It's even though it's end of life, and sometimes we look at certain assets and we can push it off a year or two. In this case, we can't. It does control. It is integrated with other systems like our boiler system as well for heating the pools. And there's some times where we've had to lower the pool temperature slightly, but also from a climate control perspective and humidity perspective, it's more. It becomes an issue for, the staff that are working there as well, that are spending hours in that environment. You need to make sure that your humidity controls are in place to sustain that in that environment. So we've had several shutdowns, or at least one-day shutdowns to do some repairs here and there. But ultimately, if we don't have that system running at all, then it'd be very difficult to run an aquatic environment.
I'm going to quickly go to Ash because I think he had a comment on the debt, and then
I'll be very quick, Councillor Dunstall. When we were requested, or when staff was requested to reduce the original proposed capital budget from 15 to 12 million, the suggestion from us, being CPAs, to department heads, please see what you can defer to 2027 without kicking the can down the road. So that was a very strong consideration to the comment that was raised earlier.
Thank you. Councillor Dunstall?
Thank you, Hugh, Mayor. Director Catania, correct me if I'm wrong, which very well could be, but the aquatics, that is a programs that we offer that actually makes money. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor Sallin, to Councillor Dunstall, we do look at full cost recovery when we're running Learn to Swim programs. So when there's lessons there, registered programs, I mean, in that environment, you're always circulating the water, you're dumping some water, filling it, heating it. So there are costs associated with that, and there's obviously public swims and drop-ins, which don't necessarily make money, if anything, lose money. But it is really our times in the evenings during the week when we look at those maximized use of Learn to Swim programs where we make money, yes.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, through the chair. I'll shift the topic slightly here. Talking about reserves. I note that there is a line item that would suggest we are setting aside some money for reserves, and I know that it is detailed in a few different places and a few different cover sheets. I guess my question is are we going to get, as part of the detailed return to us, sort of a breakdown of what we're saving for and what reserves are being funded?
Through the mayor, I would suggest that would be part of the long-term capital plan that we're going to be working with a different KPMG team in the next few months. Right now, we could give you a total as here's how much is in reserves.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, through the chair. So just the 1.5 million that we are putting towards reserves, though, do we have a clear plan for the full 1.5 million, like, as to where it's going, or is it just we picked this number and that's what we're putting aside?
Yes, it's the latter. The only split within it is slightly over $1 million going to capital and slightly less than $500,000 going into operating reserves.
And again, that would be a decision point in the future for council on the long-term financial planning component. Councillor Dunstall?
Thank you. I think that our previous financial person had suggested, and I want to know if it was actually done, that the capital budget, that those funds, there would be buckets. That at the time, last year, everything was just put in one bucket, and then it was divvied out, whereas we were going to, maybe I don't remember this correctly, but we were going to actually put something in infrastructure and in community services, and that, did that actually happen? Were I dreaming, or did it actually happen?
I can speak to that one. No, you're not dreaming. Slightly the other way around, though. Our former had it all in one bucket. This council requested that it be broken down into more defined buckets. Again, that did not happen, and that is again part of the reason why in the fall when I employed KPMG was to do the long-term financial planning so that we can get that accurately dealt with following best practices, and that's work that'll be done in the Q1 work. Yes, Councillor Cressman.
So since we're talking of kicking those buckets down the road, I guess my question is, we talk about water and wastewater. Have we dipped into those buckets to reduce the tax levy over the years, and so representing primarily a sector or a ward who doesn't have access to wastewater? I've always been pretty adamant that we fund wastewater renewal and et cetera from the reserves from wastewater. But if we all have benefited by dipping into that bucket, then I can't be as holier than thou on this topic. Have we been doing that over the years, reducing our tax levy by robbing the wastewater and water reserves?
So I would maybe look to Ken to speak about water, wastewater reserves and how they work, but those are legislative reserves, if I'm not wrong. And I would then suggest that some of the questions you're asking are, again, the reason why we have KPMG doing a long-term financial plan. It wasn't really in the scope of work of preparing this budget, but that is in the scope of the long-term financial plan. But I don't know if Ken wanted to add anything about the water and wastewater reserves. It's okay if you don't. I want to give you the opportunity.
Through the mayor, admittedly, I'm not sure that I do want to answer completely because it is one of those things that we are looking at. We are looking at where the funds are transferring between departments and making sure that is an exercise that we are looking into, among other ones, for 2026 to ensure that it is right-sized. I can't answer whether or not historically we have been subsidizing one way or the other, but we are looking into that as a corporation.
And Ash?
Here I am fully getting in trouble with my risk management team, but I would like to add our observation over the last 2 months of working with the staff and the mayor, and I'll state the obvious, the root cause of all your questions is not having a competent CPA or no CPA at all. I'm not saying anything against the past team. That is a root cause. That's expertise that's lacking internally. A treasurer has been hired, so from next week that'll be addressed. But I would like to reiterate that we see lots of organizations across the country. This is not unique to Wilmot. Other organizations, including several municipalities, I'm not defending anything, I'm just stating the facts. Remote area municipalities, remotes defined at 30 minutes driving distance from a major city, they cannot find accountants. People are not entering the profession. It's boring. We like it. I don't know why people find it boring. It's challenging, right? So that is the root cause. You can put as many competent people in the organization, but they're not trained accountants. So all these questions lead back to the absence of that, and it's not one person. I believe usually there are 3 people in the accounting team, and there are none of them there, right? So I just wanted to point that out in context of macroeconomics and the struggles most organizations, not just yours, but all types of organizations are facing across the country.
Thank you for that context. Any other questions, amendments at this time? Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you. Through the chair. I'm sort of looking and just taking a quick step back and sort of examining everything that we've uncovered and looked at this evening in this document and the task ahead of us in terms of looking at what needs to come out next week. I think it goes without saying that there obviously will be another budget meeting. But I'm wondering, and I want to pose the question, is it time that maybe we take a step back from the strong mayor process and put this budget in the perspective of that we can get it done next month in February, but make sure that we take the time required to have all the information set up properly, have it very clear, make sure that the numbers are backed up so that there's no miscalculations or questions about it, and forego that February 9th date.
So I have spoken directly to the province on this and requested what that would look like or if that's possible. The initial response I got was no, but that they would speak to the officials, so that would be the non-electeds, and get me an answer. So at this point in time, I don't have a definitive answer from the lawmakers if it is actually plausible to be able to extend or remove that 30-day period time. Currently, what was posed to me is that in strong mayors, there is the ability to make, and to be fair, any council has this ability predating strong mayors to make in-year budget changes. So that could be the way that we could get around that as well. So saying open to the concept, however, also following the legislation and waiting for that final answer back. So I can't definitively tell you yes or no right now. Councillor Cressman.
So far, through you, Mayor, far be it from me to talk about a creative accounting department, but what I would suggest is there an opportunity? I think if we introduce one or two amendments and then you have the opportunity of vetoing or that whole debate, doesn't that string out the whole process and we could gain some time by that? And maybe I don't have the...
It is creative, but I'm getting a head shake from the clerk in that new amendments wouldn't be able to be proposed in that time period.
I thought there was possibly some wiggle room, as I like to call it, in terms of what the requirements are and being strategic in how we placed amendments, and then you would use your maximum amount of time to respond to those amendments. That's where I was headed on all this.
Yes. And I mean, the other thing I would note, because I know that there was a request for me to remove the tabling of the budget, which the interpretation that I read, that's not available, but regardless, this still is the budget that we're going to be working with. So again, not looking to get council to make decisions they aren't comfortable with, just saying very honestly at this exact moment in time, I can't definitively tell you the best way to do that, but there are tools to my understanding that council can reopen a budget partway through the year. So recognizing that could be in February, even if this technically does fall through the timeline. So giving those answers, and again, once I have clarity from the province, I'm also happy to share that. Any other questions or amendments at this point in time? Okay, seeing none, I think it's pretty clear to say, especially with the additional information that was requested, we will be having the February 9th meeting. So we will move on from this item on to report 8.3, or item 8.3, and this is our fees and charges and water and sanitary fees and charges bylaws. The recommendation is that the report be received for information and that council direct staff to present a bylaw to provide fees and charges for the township for council's consideration, and that council direct staff to present a bylaw to establish water and sanitary fees and charges to users of the township's water distribution system and sanitary collection system for council's consideration. May I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Dunstall, and I will call on our Deputy CAO and Director of Corporate Services, Director Okrafka, to introduce this report.
Thank you, Mayor Salomon. The report is fairly straightforward. It's an annual report on the fees and charges. It generally references 3%, which is the COLA we've used for fees and charges. However, you will note in some of the descriptions that those fees vary from that depending on the department and depending on the timing. In general, the timing would take effect February 1st. You will note that some of those fees, I think particularly the community services, some of those ice rental fees change, I believe, in September the 1st. So there is a detailed description attached, lots of notations. Directors are all here to answer questions you may have regarding specific fees and any changes.
Questions or comments, councillors? Okay, seeing none. I did just want to make a note because it is going to essentially be the next thing that we actually deal with. We can pass the fees and charges bylaw tonight, but noting that that then are the assumptions that are being made for the revenues in the budget. It's not approving the budget, but just want you to be aware of that relationship. But it's also, we have in the past, as this council and councils before us, passed the fees and charges before the budget so that the new charge rates can start being utilized. Councillor Cressman?
Just a quick one on that. It would be modified by a number of users that requested that service. So it fixed the budget on the charges side, but it doesn't fix the revenue because you can have more people or less people that.
Yes, in the budget it is always an assumption, and that's the point to the budget being forward-facing. But we will see that come forward in the financial reporting later in the year. Seeing no other questions or comments on that, all those in favor, and that carries unanimously. We have no notices of motion and no announcements unless anybody else has. Yes, Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Sallin, would it be okay to set the time for February 9th, just for planning purposes?
Yes, I would just look to clerks if they had a proposed time already. If you can just give me one moment. Okay. So we currently don't have a time set. I would perhaps suggest if it's amenable 5:30 again. I'd be looking staff-wise seems to be okay. Council, that seems to be okay. I'm looking to KPMG. Is feasibility on your end? Yes.
I will be traveling to Vancouver, so I can attend virtually only, unfortunately.
Okay.
But I'll defer to Himalaya, but definitely it's not up to him to answer questions. It should be me answering all questions to support the staff.
Okay. Thank you very much. So 5:30 then, clerks will make sure that that is in your calendar. Any announcements? Seeing none, I'd look for a mover and a seconder for our bylaws as attached. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Sadhu. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. Confirmatory bylaw, moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? Carries unanimously. And Councillor Cressman, would you like to move to adjourn? Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Martin. Just before we do actually vote on adjournment, I again want to say a huge thank you to staff, both for all of the work on the budget leading up to this, and that also includes, I know many of our staff watch virtually, but that includes everybody, not just our CLT, and thank you to everyone who helped put this together and are continuing to work on it. And again, thank you to our consultants at KPMG who have continued and will continue to support our work. It's greatly appreciated, and really happy to get to work with all of you on this. And thank you to council for the meeting tonight. With that, all those in favor of adjourning. That carries unanimously. Have a good evening.